Good afternoon all. Christopher Coffey, good afternoon to you. Rutrude, Philomena Green, good afternoon. Alison Rogers, good afternoon to you. Pamela O'Connor. Hi, Claire. Um, Good afternoon to all of the other folks who are on. Yes, I'm jumping on a little early today, and I intend to jump off early today. Right, so I will not be distracted by the trolls. Heather Lee, good afternoon. Neil Francois, always present. Good afternoon to you, sir. And Brian, Jamuna Lemu, good afternoon. Lynette Baines, Kathy Ann Best, good afternoon to you. Yes, Gabriel, I'm early today because I have to jump off early. Marva Frank, good afternoon. Jennifer Ashby Okuli, good afternoon, Jennifer. Dawn Khan, Will Boss, London Pear, John Keto, Fitzroy Bailey, Helen Faria, The Night Hawk, Larry McMillan. Greetings to all of you. Right, so there's so many things to talk about. I can't cover everything today, but I'll just see if I can just touch on some of the main ones. Wayne Pedro, good afternoon, Deborah Duranty. Where to start by? Lord, another as I always say, never a dull moment in this country with this particular government, and with the developments over the last 7 days or so since I was last on, I am convinced that the PNM was too boring a government for 10 years. It's too boring. We didn't have all of this excitement and all of this intrigue that we've been treated to for the last 14 months under this administration. I think the day makes it 14 months. Yeah, 14 months in office, and every week is something. So it's assassination plots, um, people getting locked up. No charges, just PDOs, preventative detention orders, because in the absence of evidence, not information, not intelligence, in the absence of evidence to lay charges, the new norm appears to be, well, hit them a PDO, lock them down for the balance of the for the duration of the SOE, and let's see if we could find any evidence. And if not, well, we just let them go free and call it a day. Now, you see, the police can afford to do that because at the end of the day, when the lawsuits come, it is not the TTPS that would be liable to pay once the claimants are successful in their lawsuits, right? It is the state, it is you, the um, average citizen, you, the taxpayer. You may not suffer directly, but when you pay your taxes every month and you look at your pay slip and you see under PAYE thousands of dollars coming out, and you would prefer for that money to be used to do something or some things that could benefit you. Instead, some of it may in the future, not too distant future, find its way into the pockets of those who already have. And they used to accuse the PNM of wanting to make the rich richer, but it seems this government is prepared to hand millions, tens of millions, on a platinum platter to those who already have that type of money. So, of course, we see the developing story has been the detention, not the arrest and charge, but the detention of um, three members of the so-called 1% community. Of course, don't tell the Attorney General that 1% refers to the Syrian Lebanese community because he might challenge you on that, right? Playing smart with foolishness. Because for years we know that the term 1%, whenever mentioned, and the context in which it has been mentioned, is in reference to the Syrian Lebanese community ever since that fateful interview that they would have done with some members of the community would have done with the late Anthony Bourdain. And we saw since then it would have been pronounced by the OWTU, Ansel Roger, and they, who didn't take too kindly to that interview. And thereafter, there was the fallout and the constant use of the term 1% by the members of the current administration. So, based on today's newspapers, we are now seeing that the owners of Blue Waters and other businesses, Mr. Dominic Hadid, his wife Genevieve, and Genevieve's aunt, I think, one Star Sapga, have been detained through the use of PDOs. And of course, the Fully Duns, the members of the Fully Duns cult, are in their glee. Oh, yeah, and finally, the untouchables getting locked up and so on. And if the police didn't have evidence, they wouldn't have locked them up. So they must have evidence. And, you know, I look at these comments and I laugh, I shake my head. Because all of a sudden, the Fully Duns have this understanding that that the police were only charged when they have evidence. Now, these folks have not yet been charged, right? They are just being detention lawyers. But the Fully Duns, so happy. Why? Because the leadership of their party in the parliament and outside have always made out this case that the so-called 1% are the owners and the handlers of the People's National Movement. Now, over the last couple of weeks or so, have demonstrated, I think, convincingly, that the so-called 1% tends to benefit more when the UNC is in power than when the PNM is in power. And I would have given you those examples, right? All of the lands that were given away between 2010 to 2015 to certain members of the so-called 1%, the refusal by the People's Partnership Government to outfit buildings that were constructed by the People's National Movement under the Patrick Manning administration, and their insistence to continue renting from the so-called 1% while these buildings were there and all they needed was to be outfitted, and to have government ministries, government departments moved out of rental accommodation owned by the so-called 1% and move them into buildings that were constructed by the People's National Movement. Instead, they opted to keep these buildings empty, as I always say, monuments to PNM wastage and PNM squandermania. But the very party, the People's National Movement, that they claimed in the back pocket of the 1% is owned by the 1% and has 1% handlers. Almost immediately upon assumption into office in 2016, the People's National Movement, led by Dr. Rowley, took steps to outfit those buildings and to have these government ministries and departments and so on moved out of rental accommodation and moved into state-owned accommodation, thereby taking monies out of the bank accounts and the pockets of the so-called 1%. We saw that trend continue even up to before the last administration would have demitted office. I would have told you all on numerous occasions the various buildings that the last administration were attempting to build, again, to take away rental income from the so-called 1% and to have these buildings, these ministries housed in state-owned premises. And several of these buildings, this current UNC administration has taken a decision to halt or to pause construction, claiming that it is under review. Now, given the advanced state in which construction is for a lot of these buildings, it would make sense to continue the projects. But they keep saying, as recent as last night, I was listening to the news, CNC3, and they were making reference to a building that I have spoken about before, the facility or the building that the PNM was constructing to house persons who are living on the streets. And they would have spoken to the Minister of the People and Social Development, and she indicated that that building is still under review, the one that I keep telling you all about at the town on South Key, just as you're entering City Gate, right? So in the meantime, monies would have been spent, significant monies would have been spent, and it would have made sense to continue these buildings. Yet, when the supporters of the Fully Duns, for 10 years, complained bitterly about how the last administration didn't open the Cuba Hospital and certain schools that the People's Partnership had built that they didn't open and they left it abandoned and so on. But there is no outcry from these same people who were so incensed at certain projects that they said that the last administration didn't continue with. But we know the Cuba Children's Hospital was converted from a children's hospital into a teaching hospital and so on, and it was used during COVID. It's a good thing that that it had not been opened fully because it was available for COVID. And thereafter, it was used. And I've given you all the example. I know that it was in use because my sister was there. In fact, that's where she would have passed away. And having gone there subsequently to treat with issues, paperwork, and so on related to my sister's passing, there were patients there who were not COVID patients. But so the supporters of the fully done now, they're happy. Imagine you have citizens who are happy that other citizens have been arrested, not because of the so-called white-collar crime of which you've been accusing them for many years. In fact, when the Attorney General stood up in the Parliament a couple of weeks ago and made reference to the so-called 1%, and they talk about it going after white-collar criminals and so on, we expect to hear, well, okay, what is white-collar crime? All right, so that's what they claim, eh? But what they are being held on has nothing to do with any white-collar crime, because there's a plot, so-called plot against the Prime Minister and other senior government officials, serious criminal offense. Right? I know white-collar crime. And but the fully dones are happy and they're in glee. And of course, they will say, oh, the PNM trying to defend the 1%, and why the PNM attacking the police, and we have done no such things. The political leader of the People's National Movement has expressed some concern. She has said, let due process take its course. We are concerned that not just for this latest arrest, but for all those persons that this government continue to hold using PDOs, which the state of emergency allows them to do, to detain people for extended periods of time with no evidence, no charges being laid, and after a period of months, they are just releasing the people after their lives have been negatively impacted. So we would have seen a story published a few days ago in the newspaper where one such individual who was detained under a PDO under the state of emergency back late last year. And after 2 months of being detained with no charges being laid and so on, he was just released and sent on his way. And he would have indicated in that article how his life was impacted. One, he lost his job. Because obviously, if you're detained for 2 months, right, you're not coming to work. Notwithstanding what the facts are, the employer says, oh, you get deported. So you were detained? Well, all right, well, no work for you. So you lost your job, right? The embarrassment that it would have caused him, because people will speculate, yeah, here so-and-so get locked up. Yeah, PDO. So, it's serious thing, whatever. So this gentleman, he also spoke about the impact that the conditions in the facility where he was being held had on him, right? The less than ideal conditions, the impact it had on him emotionally and mentally and so on. And we must not underestimate that, because let us not forget that Anand Ramlogan, the man who seems to be getting all the briefs from this government, every time you see any matter comes up that involves the state having to engage in litigation, almost invariably, you see a picture, you hear the name Anand Ramlogan mentioned. Right? And in fact, this latest issue with TNTech and Keith Scotland, I think the attorney that has been retained by the state or by TNTech has been Anand Ramlogan. So even though he's not in office, still you don't need to be in office because he benefited, right? But I raised that name firstly because we would recall that he was the attorney representing the 9 men who were acquitted of the murder of Indra Naipal Coolman. And he sued the state on behalf of these 9 men for 2 things. 1, malicious prosecution, and 2, the impact that the prison conditions had on these men. They said mess up their mentals to be in remand or in the Golden Grove prison, the state of the cells, the smell, the just the general environment, having to use this pail, this bucket to relieve yourself and so on. The conditions in there were horrible, and it took a toll on them mentally. And the court, he was suing the state $3.2 to $3.4 million per person, right? Coming up to just close to about $32 million. And the state would have we know that whole saga with the missing file and so on, and then there was a default judgment of some $20 million for 49 gentlemen. But I raised the point to tell you that they were successful in suing the state for the effect that the prison conditions had on them. I am not aware that those prison conditions have significantly improved since these men were acquitted. And what was interesting about that is that Ram Logan was the Attorney General at the time when these men were incarcerated. He was the Attorney General who would have hired Dina Sitahal, Gilbert Peterson, and Israel Khan as special prosecutors at a cost of $50,000 per month each to act in the capacity of special prosecutors to maliciously prosecute these 9 men, because he is now telling the court that the men were maliciously prosecuted. Now, while he was Attorney General, right, there were concerns about the conditions in the prison. The People's Partnership government would have spent a lot of money to appoint and facilitate an inquiry into the state of prison and the prison conditions, which was led by, I think, Professor Diusaran and the then Inspector of Prisons, Daniel Khan, who I believe, I stand to be correct, but I believe he's the son of Israel Khan. And they would have generated a very detailed report about the conditions in the prison, which would have been submitted to Cabinet. And Cabinet did absolutely nothing in terms of implementing the recommendations of that report, despite they would have put this commission together and it would have cost money. Nothing was done to implement the recommendations of that report, save and except that they spent between $88 to $120 million for that eater food fence by the Golden Grove prison that did nothing. I keep saying there is no nexus between the fence and the prison. We heard that they had planned to shut down Carrera prison and transfer the prisoners from Carrera to the maximum security prison. That never happened, but they moved with haste to construct this multi-million-dollar fence, this eater food fence, as the prison officers refer to it. There was no benefit from it, right? Well, today, for those of you familiar with the East, you're driving up there and you approach the prison and you look to your left and you see this big fence running all the way up to the prison. There's a big car park between the prison and the end where the fence ends, and all you have inside there is bush. There was no benefit to you, the taxpayer, right? So they sued on that basis, and they appear to be successful. So we see in today's article issues being raised again with the conditions in the prison. And but coming back to the fully dones, right? The glee in which they're treating with this whole situation. And you know, all the memes have started about I saw one meme yesterday, they are hearing that some of the persons who are detained singing about some mention about Andrew Gabriel and what would have something with Dr. Rowley and all kind of machinations, right? All manner of machinations coming from these people. But I just want to remind the fully dones that since all of a sudden you all know that, well, if the police didn't have evidence, they would not charge them, they would not lock them up. Again, they're not charged. But when Ram Logan and Ramdeen were charged, arrested and charged, right? They were charged and they came before the court. You always saying that was PNM. In fact, they said it too. You know, this is all a PNM witch hunt. And these guys are innocent and they did nothing. But you all are now saying if the police didn't have evidence, but it didn't, that concept didn't apply back then. That if the police didn't have evidence, they wouldn't have been able to charge Ramdeen and Ram Logan. So all we kept hearing about is indemnity and Faris, and they offer Vincent Nelson to pay him, all kind of choppy talk. But it had nothing to do with the police having evidence. And this is why I continue to say the supporters of the UNC are some of the biggest hypocrites, not some of, they are the biggest hypocrites in this country, right? And some of the most dangerous citizens. Because The logic that they apply when the PNM is in power, they seem to have abandoned that logic now under this administration, and they have a defense for every single thing. Everything they have a defense for as to why the government must do this. But the very same things that they are tolerating now and have an excuse for and an answer for, when the PNM was in power and did less than that, it was deemed and categorized as and characterized as oppression. Rowley oppressing the poor, people suffering. You can't find work. We can't afford to buy chicken, only chicken foot. All that set of talk. Only oppression, and this is a wicked and oppressive government. But you now had this administration in power for 14 months, who, when they were in opposition, they too criticized and referred to the last administration and the last prime minister as being oppressive. They have now come into power and are doing things 10 times worse. But the fully done, don't consider that to be oppression. No, it has to be done. That is good governance. That's what we need. We need a strong and firm leader. But when Rowley was strong and firm, no, he is a dictator. He's a bully. He want to play talking to citizens like if they're children. But Kamala could talk to you all like that, refer to you all, as she did, as being of subpar intelligence. And they have an answer for, oh yes, we supporting that, yes. Prime Minister know what she's talking about. She told you all fines were too high under the PNM. She come and she double it. Yes, it has to be done. The only people who need to be concerned about the fines, the high fines, are the lawbreakers. And when the PNM was saying, well, the only people who need to be concerned about the merit point system are the lawbreakers. Oh, but no, that concept didn't operate. No, the PNM just wicked and they're just looking to get money from taxpayers and they want to get money from the citizen as a revenue generating mechanism. But under the UNC, oh no. The same concept doesn't apply. All of us know the only people need to be concerned is the lawbreakers. How many of you, any fully duns who are listening, ever got any demerit points? Probably many of you didn't get it. Why? You know why? Because you obey the law. Same concept applies now. Obey the law. But when some people get traffic fines now, right? Innocently, and I made the point in the parliament, if people don't know the law, then they would be inclined to break the law. A lot of people still don't understand the traffic fines. None of the fines, but what the law is with respect to traffic regulations. Some people, if you were to put them now, they have their license 10, 15, 20, 30 years. Send them now to do the regulations test and I bet you they fail. Because they would have studied at that point in time to pass. And then after that, out the window. There have been upgrades and updates to the regulations since then. But what is in place to ensure that persons who've held their licenses for years still have there is something in place to bring them up to speed or up to date with whatever updates there have been with respect to these regulations. None. Right? So when you see some people doing things and they figure they're correct, they pull out their phone and they recording and stuff. So if they have to go to court, they intend to fight because they believe that what they're doing is correct. So whose fault is that? And then they come and get a ticket, but the fully done saying, yes, that has to be done. SOE under the PNM, no. What kind of thing is that? They want to deprive citizens of their rights. Our constitutional rights are being infringed. A 4-month SOE. But Kamala come and rest a 10-month SOE on you all and probably going to run into a 13-month or so or a 12, 13-month SOE. And that's okay, yes, because we need to deal with the crime situation in the country. Crime is out of hand. And I support the Prime Minister. So if it is she hit your SOE for 5 years, they will defend that. We need that. But if the PNM hit you for 4 months, no, we're not accepting that. This government had to go. Rowley must go. Stuart Young must go. Hines must go. The most dangerous set of citizens in this country. Right? Some of the most ridiculous defenses that I have heard from some of them. It's amazing. Amazing. Nothing short of. And that is why we feel fortified in our decision not to support Zoso, as was in the configuration that the government wanted. Because if we see now under a state of emergency that you're only just locking people up willy-nilly, if you say something that somebody perceive to be offensive to the government, Next thing, police show up in front of your door, right? And they carry you down in the Maria to answer a question, and then you hear you're detained 2-3 days, 4 days, and then the next thing you get in a PDO, and you're inside for the remainder of the state of emergency, right? No charge. You just get locked up because you said something. And again, the supporters of the Fully Done's endorsing that until it happens to them. We have people inside now who would have supported the UNC, who cussed the PNM for years, who during the election, they were always, all of a sudden, they pop up on social media, cussing Rowley and cussing Imbut and cussing this one, PNM, this, PNM must go, PNM. They defended and they promoted the UNC. When UNC wins, everybody wins. They promoted yellow is the code. Today, they find themselves victims of yellow is the code, and when UNC wins, they lock up, right? Fundamental difference. Or let's say all kind of thing about Rowley, who wished death on Dr. Rowley when he had COVID and who wanted him to die every time he traveled abroad, to come back, and they wish the plane crashed. All kind of stupidness they said. Anybody get locked up? No. Freedom of speech. Say what you want. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but the posture and the position of the last administration. Say what you had to say. All kind of things. They said the worst of things about Dr. Rowley. Nobody had to worry that 2 or 3 unmarked police vehicles will pull up in front of the door one morning to come and take them down, and then they end up inside. So now you have to be very careful of what you say. So, and I will come to that just now, based on reading this article in the Express today that treats with the issue of the Hadids and Ms. Sabga, where apparently in the wake of the Attorney General's statements in the Parliament a couple of weeks ago, where it appeared that it was an attack, a political attack on the so-called 1%, that apparently some, and this is my interpretation of what I've read, that something may have been said in response to, and in a private setting, that something may have been said in response to what the Attorney General, what appeared to be an attack by the Attorney General on the Syrian Lebanese community. And coming out of that, this latest development of persons being detained, right? Now, I am not seeing the Fully Done's, the usual suspects, who whenever somebody under the UNC would have been arrested, charged, would say, hey, lawsuit come in. Look how the taxpayers going and have to pay out money. Yeah, they're going and sue. It was the same thing they said when Ram Logan and Ramdeen, when the DPP would have discontinued the case against these two gentlemen, not for lack of evidence, not because of they were acquitted, no, because the main witness refused to testify, and we know the circumstances under which he refused to testify. And it was the decision of the DPP that it would be unfair to continue to have this matter hanging over these gentlemen like the sword of Damocles. And he said, well, we'll have to discontinue the matter for now. However, if things change in the future, that he will have no inhibition in reinstating the charges against them. But to the Fully Done's, you all were saying that these two gentlemen were going to sue, and they were going to win millions of dollars for malicious prosecution, wrongful arrest. It's been more than 2 years. What is going on with that lawsuit? How come neither gentleman, two eminent attorneys, one of them senior counsel, are yet to file civil suit against the state to collect the millions that you all said they would collect for wrongful arrest and malicious prosecution? We know Mr. Ram Logan busy in the courthouse these days. And we know, based on his representation of those 9 men for the video Naipaul Pullman, that he is fully well versed in lawsuits that treat with malicious prosecution. Where is his lawsuit? What is he waiting on more than 2 years later to sue for these millions you all said that he would sue for? Is it that he was not maliciously prosecuted? Is it that it was not wrongful arrest? Is it that there is a concern that if you sue the state for malicious prosecution and wrongful arrest and so on, civil suit, that the state in defending itself would be provided with an opportunity to lay bare the evidence that it would have presented had this matter gone to trial, the criminal matter gone to trial. And you don't want to open that kind of wound. So is that why? But I just asking the fully dons who listen, help us out now. What is or what is what is the keepback? Why haven't these two eminent attorneys who Kamla Prasad Bisesa described as good boys, good liars, sorry, good lawyers, my bad, as good lawyers, why haven't they sued the state yet? Just asking. I'm just curious because that's plenty money they could get, right? You all said that. See how your logic doesn't hold water, and these people continue to allow you to make fools of yourselves. But anyway, but I coming back to that just now. We will get into that article, but let me treat with a couple other things because I said I'm jumping off early today, and I will not be distracted. So let me get this here. So last week we witnessed what, in my view, is perhaps the biggest diplomatic snub in a long time. And it has to do with the two earthquakes that took place in Venezuela, the back-to-back earthquakes, registering over 7 on the Richter scale. And there has been significant damage, as we see, in Venezuela, in particular in Caracas and surrounding areas. And the death toll continues to rise on a daily basis. There has been estimations that the death toll could reach as much as 30,000, anywhere between 10,000 to 30,000. I think they're approaching the 1,000 mark. And search and rescue is quickly becoming, recovery efforts, because as the days wear on and persons remain under rubble and so on, the likelihood of them surviving grows slimmer. But we would have seen where several world leaders would have issued statements of solidarity with the people of Venezuela. And almost every expression of solidarity that has come from a world leader, the current president of Venezuela has made it a point to post on Facebook the expressions of solidarity, who it came from, and expressing on behalf of her government and the citizens of Venezuela her gratitude and appreciation. But one such expression of solidarity that remains, as we say in WhatsApp, unread, no blue ticks, was those coming from our Prime Minister, Kamla Prasad Bisesa, and her government. I would have, over the last couple of days, gone through the Facebook page of Delcy Rodriguez, the president of Venezuela, and I always refer to her as the president. I don't say the acting president, because acting suggests that it's just for a short period of time until the substantive comes back. Given the current circumstance of the substantive in a prison in New York, coming back for him. All right? So she is going to serve out the rest of his term unless an election is called prior to that. So if you go and you look now on Delcy's Facebook page, where she's been posting, sharing the actual words uttered or the statements put out by the various world leaders, and then she will put in her response. I've searched. I have not seen that of the government of Trinidad and Tobago at all. And of course, the fully dons, attacking, have gone on the attack. Oh, Delcy disrespectful, and she this, and she that, and she petty, and she behaving like a little child. No, she has made it basically abundantly clear. As far as she is concerned, and as far as her government is concerned, the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago remain persona non grata. And her government want nothing to do with them. So if it wasn't bad enough, and if the message wasn't received from the trips that Ms. Rodriguez has been taking since she became president, she went to Grenada, she bypassed Trinidad and Tobago. She went to Barbados, she bypassed Trinidad and Tobago. She went to India, she bypassed Trinidad and Tobago. I think she went somewhere in Europe as well, bypassed Trinidad and Tobago, which is the closest neighbor. Nothing. She didn't come in here at all. And she has now taken it a step further. She's not recognizing that communication centered by our government. Now, a couple of weeks ago, let's see if I get this here. The Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs launched an attack on what I consider to be an attack on the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, former Prime Minister Stuart Young. A blistering attack. Some of you may have missed it because you don't look at the Parliament channel, but I will play it for you so that you can hear. And in that, he made the statement, you don't know who we're talking to, and you think you know one, think I don't know one. Well, I would say to the Minister of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, yes, we don't know who you all are talking to in Venezuela, but we know who you're not talking to. Delcy. Because if this isn't evidence of the fact that Delcy don't want nothing to do with Olia, I don't know what is. But listen to Mr. Sobers.
I have come to appreciate, Madam Deputy Speaker, to appreciate to an extent contributions that are sometimes relevant from the member of Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. Sometimes. But today he fell woefully short of those marginal expectations that I had of him. Woefully short. He spoke, the honorable member spoke about not having relations with Venezuela. And he is well versed on those issues and whatnot. And speaking about someone who is talking about re-engineering to get a proper result. Not just jumping on a plane to have a jaunt for having a jaunt's sake, to rack up per diems. That's not what we're doing on this side. And speaking as if going to Venezuela and taking a selfie is something that should be laudable. When his own party indicated that they had no idea what he was doing there, that they denied him like Peter denied Christ. But telling me and telling us on this side about relationships with Venezuela and calling person's name in the current administration as if he knows about the conversations that are going on between Trinidad and Tobago and Venezuela. You have your facts wrong, Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. You have your facts wrong. The one or two names that you will peddle about Raul and whoever else you want to talk about, trust me when I tell you, believe me when I tell you, is more than those two people that you're talking about that we're speaking to on this side. And we know how to advance those diplomatic relations, something that they don't know anything about. If it was up to that administration, what would have happened subsequent to January the 3rd? We'd have been stuck in a situation where we'd have been begging both persons, one who sits in the north and one who sits in the south, to ask them to give us some gas. And we'd have been left wanting. We have been reliably told and informed by both sides. Gas is not something, if you listen properly, you'll understand what I'm saying. Gas is not something high on their priority list. Venezuela is a country rich of resources, natural resources, and the entire world is knocking on their door. And rightfully so, they deserve it. But there had to be an exercise that had to be conducted. And that exercise has taken place. And because of the leadership for the member of Superior, the Honorable Prime Minister, we are in a very good starting pole position to move forward with those conversations. We're not being left out. Maybe because the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West is no longer in what he thought to be the driving seat. He's now uninformed and will want to peddle mischief within the house about who's not part of this conversation. You wouldn't know because you're not there. The persons who matter and the persons who are important are there. And my friend, your time has passed. You could speak about Shell and you could speak about BP. They are not calling your name with any regard. You have to be the one now begging like a socially displaced
Madam
person.
Speaker, 48-1, please. Will we start to talk about the bill anytime soon, please?
Well, maybe if you sit down and you listen, you will understand.
Overall, San Fernando, continue, member.
The member from Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West. That going up and down the place as a socially displaced person is not helping your party. It's not helping the country. And I don't know what circles you think you are in that people are speaking about you in high regard. They are not. They are ashamed for you.
But by show, so was we are ashamed for you and we are ashamed for your prime minister that world leaders have issued statements after your government, after your prime minister, and Delcy puts up what they said and just totally bypass all their release as if it didn't exist. That's so. I'm not interested in that. So all these, whoever they're talking to in Venezuela and who they're talking to and they're talking to who matters, well, to me, the person who matters most is Delcy, the president, and who I think is still the minister of energy in Venezuela. She matters. She's at the top of the food chain, and clearly she don't want nothing to do with all. She's not talking to you all. To her, you all are invisible. Imagine Guyana, who has had a long-standing border dispute with Venezuela. Guyana, who is currently, I think, in the International Court of Arbitration with respect to this, and Venezuela with respect to the same border dispute. Guyana, who has taken issue recently with Delcy wearing this brooch showing the Essequibo and so on and all of that. Their president sent out a general release, nothing specific, because I had an exchange with one of the supporters of the Fully Done's, talking about, well, the reason why is because the prime minister didn't send a communique directly to address to Delcy, but she put out a general statement. Did you read the statement of the president of Guyana? But Delcy put up his statement. They have more issues with Guyana than they do with Trinidad and Tobago, but she put up his statement and thanked him. Let me read it for you for the benefit of the Fully Done's. Let me read it for you all. Right? In case you all missed, as you conveniently do. And his let me see if I get it here. Where is it? What he put out was a lot shorter than what the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago put out. So let me get this here. Right. Let's see here. So, no, not this one. This one. All right. I saved that. Where did I save it? Just give me 1 second. Let me pull it up here. Right. For those at the back of the class who missed it, let me help you all out. Pull up Delcy page. Just give me 1 second, folks. It says so many things. Where is it? Oh boy, Delcy get some more. Well, all right. Just no. Just get this here. Right. This is what the president of Guyana put out. As neighbors, we are deeply saddened by the scale, magnitude, and destruction caused by the two powerful back-to-back earthquakes that struck Caracas yesterday, and so far claiming dozens of lives and injuring hundreds. We stand in solidarity with the people of Venezuela. As neighbors, we are ready to offer assistance within our capacity. Our love, prayers, and thoughts are with the families of those affected and the people of Venezuela. So for the Fully Done's at the back of the class, that was not directed specifically to Her Excellency. Let me get this here. Let me see if I can find what her response was to that. Just so many she posted up. Trinidad and Tobago, nowhere there. Nowhere there. But where is my friend, the member for Tabaquite? What is your position on that? Who are you talking to in Venezuela? You couldn't call one of them and tell them, hey, tell Delcy, don't do that now. That she don't embarrass you soon. Don't leave us on red. It's not right. And Delcy's response was, we would like to thank Guyana's President, Irfan Ali, for his solidarity and his willingness to offer support to the Venezuelan people during these difficult times. His message conveys solidarity, respect, and a sense of neighborliness towards Venezuela. This is Delcy, right? Response. I looking through here, nothing. No reply to Kamala. No reply to Kamala in the UNC. Nothing. As recent as 17 hours ago, she would have responded to the most recent of 20 hours ago. She spoke about the European Union. She expressed gratitude, solidarity to the IMF managing director 18 hours ago. 18 hours ago, she expressed her gratitude to the United Arab Emirates President, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Nothing for Trinidad and Tobago. So let me just read for you what our government put out. It's a little more lengthy than what Irfaan Ali put out. The government and the people of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago express its firm solidarity with the government and the people of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela in the aftermath of the powerful earthquakes that struck off the nation's coast on June 24, 2026. We note with concern the reports of significant seismic activity throughout Venezuela and in particular its capital, Caracas. The government of Trinidad and Tobago remains mindful of the vulnerability of our region to natural disasters and shares the anxiety of our neighbors during this challenging period of assessment and recovery. The people of Trinidad and Tobago cherishes the fraternal bond with the people of Venezuela, and in the spirit of enduring friendship and close bilateral ties between our two nations, not under them. Right? There's been no close bilateral ties since the 28th of April, 2025. The government of Trinidad and Tobago stands prepared to provide any requested support and assistance to the Venezuelan authorities where possible. The Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs continues to monitor the situation closely through our diplomatic mission in Caracas, which was not significantly impacted by the event. Our thoughts remain with those affected by this event, and we offer our steadfast support for the safety and resilience of the Venezuelan people. Hey, Sean, Minister Sobers, you getting a response to that yet, sir? Just asking, curious, asking for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, right? Who see and Delcy acknowledging everybody else's and not ours. We're supposed to be their closest neighbors. So when Mr. Man wants to launch an attack on Stuart Young, talk about Stuart don't know and call him name and whatever circles he feel in, and he feel that his name is still held in high regard and so on. I'm certain that Stuart would have put out a public statement expressing solidarity with Venezuela. Almost certain Delcy will publicly respond to that. Right? So she still clearly holds you all and your government in no regard. And I'm sure she's heard complaints coming from this side. Probably not from persons of consequence, but who referring to her as petty and so on. And it seems that was her deliberate intention. To let you all know, all is not forgiven. All right? And she don't want nothing to do with all here. So we now know, thanks for telling us, we don't know who you're talking to, but now we know who you're not talking to. It ain't Delcy. All right? So that is out of the way. We'll see where that snub goes and how that impacts on Trinidad and Tobago's energy future. Okay? When we see in the opposition that this government still is unable to have direct conversation with the leadership of Venezuela, this proves that. Right? And for all they want to say about Stuart Young, Stuart could still pick up himself and he could go to Venezuela and he could have a meeting with Delcy in the morning. The Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago cannot do that. The Minister of Foreign Affairs cannot do that. The Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs probably can't do that. Because if they could have, they would have done it by now. What is going on with this diplomatic mission that the Prime Minister told us about 2 months ago that was supposed to be going to Venezuela? What's going on with that? They were supposed to be going soon. What is the UNC's definition of soon? In 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 2035? What's going on with that? Meanwhile, Shell and BP continue to engage in negotiations with Venezuela. Right. On behalf of their shareholders, Trinidad and Tobago, we are not shareholders in BP or Shell. All right, so we had to get wherever we get from that, we had to take it. Eat humble pie. And say, well, can't even say half a loaf better than that. Because we even get half a loaf. In this case, we had to say a slice is better than none. And in a cake with 100 slices, and you get one, but then they will say we're unpatriotic. No, we're not unpatriotic. We told you all. that this would happen. We told you that if you elected the UNC into office, they would have a difficult time negotiating with Venezuela. Told you all that. And now we are seeing it come to pass, that they have to rely on intermediaries, middlemen, proxies to do what the last administration was doing directly through the Minister of Energy himself, through the Prime Minister himself. Oh, they like to laugh about Dr. Rowley went Venezuela and he do the conga line with Maduro. That conga line bore fruit. It bore fruit. Now you all can't even pick up the phone and call Mira Flores and say good morning. Anyway, I'm going to move on to the next point. So, the Attorney General in the Senate a couple of weeks ago, a few days ago, again continued his what some consider to be his assault on the so-called 1%, the Syrian Lebanese community. And it is not lost on the average citizen that this latest development involving Dominic Hadid and his wife and her aunt and so on comes on the heels of statements that the Attorney General is on record as having made in both the lower house and then he doubled down in the upper house, right? And persons are concerned about that. Because while they would have accused the PNM of political witch hunts and political victimization and so on, we never had anything like that. No Attorney General got up in the Parliament and made statements talking about telling people that you know, if you come against him and his Prime Minister and the I forget the term that he used. I was trying to find the video. I don't know if Deanne Joseph could send it for me. I think she may have posted a short clip with the Attorney General talking about referring to Tetron and letting the 1% community know that the cell in Tetron awaits. But there was a word that he used to describe the conditions of the cell in the accommodations at Tetron, right? Which could very well come back to haunt him if a lawsuit is brought. Albeit that I understand that Mr. Hadid is not at Tetron, but the PDO was changed. He was supposed to have been held at the Eastern Correctional Facility in Santa Rosa, which is a minimum security facility, which is where most of the PDO detainees are being held. Instead, it was amended to send him to Golden Grove Prison, remand, where the conditions are even worse. So I don't know if it's a case that the Eastern Correctional Facility is overcrowded, which I was told it was by a prison officer who was stationed there, and he would have told me about the infrastructure. I told you all already about it, the plumbing issues, the sewer system getting clogged up and all kind of thing, and toilets backing up, and it's a mess, right? But the latest report is that Mr. Hadid is to be held at the maximum security prison on remand. Same place where these 9 men who sued the state for the conditions, for the mental impact that the conditions at that facility had on them, and they won, he is now being sent there, supposed to be. And his wife and her aunt are supposed to be held at the women's prison in the vicinity, right? So it is not passing strange that mere weeks or mere days after the Attorney General made that statement that this development took place. And it was done so in the context of white-collar crime. Right? We were hearing about nothing of what is now playing out. But let me just play for you what the AG said. So let me get this here. I have it saved. Where is this? Where is this? I know I saved it. So that's not what I'm looking for. All right, just give me 1 second here, folks. Let me find this. See, I don't like to misquote these people now. These times, Misquoting is dangerous. And in these days of AI, you can't trust these people, no. Can't trust them at all. Next thing you know, they do up some AI thing and have you saying what you didn't say, and then you're the victim of a PDO. Let me see here. Why is this taking so long to load? What is going on here? All right, folks, give me just 1 second. Let me pull this up here. Was it this one? Yes, this is what I'm looking for. Right. So listen to the Honorable Attorney General.
A large part of what I said in the other place, and I present it on record in this house, dealt with the fact that a certain section of the country was permitted, and we know this now, they were permitted free access to US dollars. When they wish to travel, they had credit cards, just like some of us, most of us. The difference is your credit card would probably have a limit of $500 US. Mine has a little more than that on it. But guess what? Those fellas could go spend $100,000 US this month on their credit cards, and then come back, pay that off, and go again. They had no limits. How could that be fair in a society like ours, where the banks are telling everybody else, line up for your $200 US to go and travel? And you know something, colleagues? That is wrong. This government will not You could jump high, you could jump low, you could talk race, you could race big, because that is what is going on. That is what is going on. The Prime Minister didn't walk back any statement. What the Prime Minister did was underline.
Get this here again. Right.
The difference is your credit card will probably have a limit of $500 US.
Honorable Senators.
When the PNM member for Port of Spain South, a man who went to the same school, not your school, Senator Market, a man who went to the same school as me, same high school as, yeah, he did. He did. He's a Fatima man. Yeah. You are Kelsey man, we are Fatima man. The only time race was discussed in the lower house was when my good friend from Port of Spain South said something about a particular community. I said nothing about race. You know what I spoke about? I spoke about the 1%. And I make no apologies for speaking about the 1%. You know why? I'll explain it to you. Because that group of persons had free access to the former Prime Minister. And that is putting it mildly. Because while they were not having cabinet meetings, this is a historical fact that he knows. And he can't say anything about it. He knows. While they were not having cabinet meetings virtually, You know when we were having cabinet meetings? On a particular street, Carlos Street in Woodbrook. And do you know who was calling the shots at those cabinet meetings? A member of the 1%. Now, there's a reason why I come here and I say the PNM is dead. And it is this. Because my friend is right. Patrick Manning used to say to us, do not talk about race. And he used to say, leave that talk for me, Patrick Manning. You all don't talk about it. You know why? Because he was terrified of the fact that the leader that he served, and I don't want to say anything more about that, and if he keeps quiet, I'll keep quiet.
No.
This evening. No. If he keeps quiet, I keep him quiet.
He talk all day.
But the leader that he served was not someone who could be trusted with talking about race in Trinidad and Tobago. That is a fact. Now, I just want to go back to a large part of what I said in the other place, and I present on record in this house, dealt with the fact that a certain section of the country was permitted, and we know this now, permitted free access to US dollars. When they wish to travel, they had credit cards, just like some of us, most of us. The difference is your credit card will probably have a limit of $500 US. Mine has a little more than that on it. But guess what? Those fellas could go spend $100,000 US this month on their credit cards, and then come back, pay that off, and go again. They had no limits. How could that be fair in a society like ours, where the banks are telling everybody else, line up for your $200 US to go and travel? And you know something, colleagues, that is wrong. This government will not
So I played that specifically because there's, coming out of that statement made there by the Attorney General, there's quite a bit to be concerned about, right? First of all, to make a statement that, so you identify a particular group you call the 1%. You say, well, you never mention race. Never mind the fact that the wider citizenry understands when we hear the term 1%. We know who reference is being made to. Don't mind it. So clearly trying to play smart with foolishness there. All right? But he has the parliamentary privilege, so even if he reference, But it appears that you are targeting a specific group of persons. So you make mention that they had seemingly unfettered access to US, they had no limit. And of what concern is that to the government? That is a banking issue. All right? That is a banking issue. So I do understand, and how the Attorney General doesn't understand, that when you identify something like that, it gives the impression, well, you have a problem with this group because they had access to US that other people didn't have access to. And it could be perceived that maybe you feel that these people were privileged and it's time for this privilege. That's one of the interpretations one could get from what we just heard there from the Attorney General. The other concern it raises is the only way the Attorney General could have gotten this information is if he has access to these people's private banking information. Because only the bank would know if you have a credit card with no limit. Only the bank would know if you could spend $100,000 US and then come back and pay it off and so on. Only the bank would know that. And last I checked, as a former banker, I know that unless the police comes with a production order issued, signed off by a judicial officer, a judge, which is akin to a warrant, which authorizes them to access information on these persons' account because you're doing some sort of investigation into them, as the case may be. You're not supposed to have access to that information, not even at the highest level of government. This is people's private information. So to come to the parliament and make a statement like that, where you are basically indicating that you have insider information. I don't know that. I'm a member of parliament. I don't know about that. I'm sure my colleagues don't know about that. But this is a decision of the bank. So to come in the parliament and talk what is clearly people's private business says that you have access to information that really, in your capacity as Attorney General, you ought not to. Because I just saw our good friend, Mr. Bachelor, come and tell us some nonsense here and a comment. And I don't want to be distracted because I said I have to jump off just now. Put in a comment about, PNM supporters are so gullible and the TTPS is not UNT and all of this foolishness. But I want to ask him, how then did the Attorney General get that information? Okay, so you say, well, how are they getting this information? Well, I say, not the TTPS. Okay, because if the TTPS is investigating and they feel, well, we need to go and get some information about these guys' banking information as part of the investigation, then they have access to it. Okay. So the only other option is that people in the bank feed in the government information about people's personal banking transactions. We know the state has control over two of the country's largest banks, First Citizens and Republic Bank. Now, the Attorney General must understand that when you come to Parliament and make a statement like that, that can cause a run on public confidence in these banks, right? Because it says nobody is safe. I recall when the PNM brought the Explain Your Wealth legislation, the Civil Asset Forfeiture Bill. I've spoken to this before. The UNC refused to support that legislation. Why? Because they said it would give the PNM power to be able to go after UNC politicians and UNC supporters. That they would use this law to be able to go and get people get information about how much property people have, where their property is, how much money they have in the bank, and all of these different things, and that they would use it to persecute and prosecute UNC politicians, UNC supporters. Never happened. The PNM never did that. And even if they did and they had access to the information, they certainly weren't as irresponsible as the Attorney General to come in Parliament and make a statement like he just did there. It was the same thing with the FATCA bill in 2016, right? Which we had to sign, otherwise we would have lost corresponding banking relationships with banks in the US, because this was the US government basically flexing their muscle. And the UNC refused to support that on the basis they said they didn't support the reciprocity clause in the legislation. Same reciprocity clause that they had no problem with in 2030. And what that reciprocity clause said was that in exchange for the government of Trinidad and Tobago cooperating with the government of the United States of America in providing information of a financial nature on any US citizens who has financial holdings in Trinidad and Tobago, anybody who has a tax liability to the government of the United States by virtue of them holding residency through a green card or so on, that in exchange for the government of Trinidad and Tobago providing that financial information and passing legislation that would obligate financial institutions in Trinidad and Tobago to share that information, the US would reciprocate, such that if the government of Trinidad and Tobago wanted to get similar information on any citizen who holds assets in the United States, that they would provide that information. The UNC say, we're not supporting that, because the PNM would use that to go and dig up to get information about UNC politicians and what business they have in the US and what assets they have there and go after UNC people. That never happened either. Right? But here it is, we are seeing clearly they're digging up in people's business. And this constant reference by the Attorney General and others in the government about the 1% and being the owners of the PNM, handlers of the PNM. They can't talk 1% without making mention of the PNM and trying to link the two. They must understand that when you keep doing that, obviously the impression that you give is that you're going after these people because you believe that somehow the PNM is inextricably linked or tethered to the 1%. And it appears to be the same thing that they accuse the PNM of wanting to do when they were in power, to go after UNC financiers, UNC supporters, UNC politicians. It now appears that this government is doing exactly what they claim the last administration would have done to them, going after people seemingly because they think that that is going to damage the PNM. Creating distractions because the last 14 months has been nothing but a S show, right? Blunder after blunder. They realize, they read the comments on social media and they know they're not popular. Their own supporters, some of the very social media activists who cost the PNM for 10 years on behalf of the UNC, right? Those who genuinely believe that the UNC would have done better for them and made their lives easier and better after the so-called 10 years of oppression under the PNM, who have now come out and spoken and said they felt betrayed and they want their vote back and they're disappointed, that they need something, some sort of distraction. So let us see, yeah, for years they said the 1% was untouchable, but we showing only they're not untouchable. So the timing of the Attorney General's statement and the arrest of this prominent businessman and his relatives is not lost on us. And I don't know if that was done, if the Attorney General's statement was done deliberately to give the impression, well, look, this is happening because of us. This is happening because we, this UNC government led by Kamala Persad-Bissessar, has taken a decision that nobody is above the law. And this is the first demonstration of that, because it is being attributed to that statement. Whether that was the intent or not, that is what the fully done said. You see, look what the Attorney General said. You see, they're going after them already. And the years of the 1% running things in this country is over, and this government and the PNM was afraid to go after them, and the PNM this and the PNM that. I continue to give you all the examples of how the PNM hit the 1% where it hurt, in the pocket. Today, we continue to see that this government continues to put money into the pockets of the same 1% that they say owns the PNM. But the fully done so want to hear that. In November last year, when the Prime Minister had her reveal or the presentation of the National Revitalization Program, 129 projects, who did they invite to the Diplomatic Center? They didn't invite me. They didn't invite some of these same clueless people here who supporting them and come in here every week to defend them. None of them were invited to that. You know who they invited? The same 1%. We saw two of the most prominent members of that community on the front page of the newspapers wearing their bright yellow ties. Both of them, father and son, attended this event wearing their bright yellow ties. What message were they trying to send? And I don't think it's coincidence, because father and son, I know for a fact, don't live in the same house. So it just happened, hey, daddy, you wearing a yellow tie today? Well, look at that. I don't know, something just, the spirit just moved me this morning when I was getting ready, and I said, you know, this yellow tie would look good with this black suit. Really, son? It moved me too. Hey, and look at seeing two more members of 2 and 3 of our good friends from the same community wear the yellow ties as well. But like that spirit just moved through our whole community today and tell us wear yellow ties. Then that's what happened, Bachelor. That's what happened, What message were they trying to send? I have never seen any event that the PNM had in the 10 years that they were there where they invited members of the Syrian Lebanese community and all of them show up, all the men show up in bright red ties. If any of you here could send me a picture of that, that would be great. Tell me what the event was. So a few months ago, you wanted the same money that you're now telling us is dirty money, filthy lucre, came from, when we consider ill-gotten gains. In November last year, it was good money. In November last year, you invited these people to come and partner with you and spend that same dirty money to bid for one or more of these 129 projects under your National Revitalization Program. Just a couple of weeks ago, we saw the Prime Minister went down south to cut ribbon, right, for the construction of a new hotel owned by, again, a member of the Syrian Lebanese community. Same member of the Syrian Lebanese community who is building a hotel in Tobago. That when Dr. Rowley was fighting for that hotel to go through, not because of any loyalty to the Syrian Lebanese community, but because as a Tobagonian, he understands that the tourism product in Tobago, one of the biggest obstacles to the advancement of the tourism product in Tobago is quality room stock. You cannot continue to rely on bed and breakfast and the 1 or 2 established hotels there. They simply do not have sufficient rooms and quality rooms, which is what one of the main attractions are. When people are coming to your country, that's one of the things that they look at. Where am I going to be staying? What are the facilities? What are the amenities that this place offers? The government was building a big hotel. Not a hotel, sorry, a big brand new airport terminal. And what is the point of you expanding this airport terminal to be able to accommodate more airlines? And when the people come here, they're struggling to find proper accommodation. So Dr. Rowley said, I would broach no opposition to the construction of that hotel at Rocky Bay. The UNC fight it down. The THA, led by the TPP, fight it down. All kind of excuses they had. They said that on the site on which they want to build the hotel, they found Amerindian bones there. They come and tell us about the ecosystem. They told us about the turtles, and the light from the hotel will affect the turtles. They had 1,000,010 reasons why that hotel should not be constructed. Yet today, under this administration, we are seeing that within days or a couple of weeks after the Prime Minister went down south to cut ribbon, we read in the newspaper that the EMA would have granted the Certificate of Environmental Clearance and so on, giving the green light for the construction of the hotel that they didn't want when the PNM was in power. UNC didn't want it. TPP didn't want it. The Tobagonian supporters of the TPP didn't want it, but now it's the best idea ever. And this government is pushing through on that. Right? But again, I highlight the fact, who did they invite to the diplomatic center to pitch? The first set of people that they sought to pitch this to. So is it that that community no longer, they haven't really shown interest? Despite the fact that they came dressed in their yellow ties, and right after the event, they would have been singing the praises of the government, that this is such an ambitious project, and this is what is needed to boost the economy and so on. All this big talk. In fact, I think one of the ministries, I can't remember which one, would have highlighted, they created this slide with the pictures of certain members of the Syrian Lebanese community and other business leaders praising the government for this initiative. And they put it up for all to see, look what they're saying, look what these people saying, these captains of industry, look at what they're saying. Is it that it's lukewarm? They ain't really showing any interest of the 965 expressions of interest you claim you've gotten for this 129 projects. None come from that community, so you realize, well, hey, like they're still loyal to the PNM, they fool we. They come with their yellow ties, but nothing by? Nah, salt for that. Be that as it may, we'll go after the PNM now. And the people that we believe financing the PNM. So if we cripple them, then how is the PNM supposed to get money from to be able to fight us? But nobody's asking the question, where is the UNC getting their financing from? I have said on numerous occasions that the UNC outspent the PNM by tens and maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars in that last election. While our candidates, and as a former candidate myself, I know we had to struggle to buy jerseys for ourselves, to raise funds to buy our jerseys. So we didn't have uniformity in terms of the jerseys that we were wearing. So every candidate, the only time you might have seen some level of uniformity is because a few candidates might have purchased their jerseys from the same supplier, right? And the supplier had standard jerseys, and therefore they will show, well, okay, this is the template. This is what you will get. But the UNC had one standard jersey. All 41 candidates, well, not 41, 39. All 39 candidates had the same jerseys. I understand they had a massive warehouse in Arang West, one of several, piled high from the floor to the ceiling with jerseys. A friend of mine who happened to live in that area happened to be passing by the place at the time and saw the big doors open and saw the pile of jerseys inside it. Told me about it, right? And we kept asking, where the money coming from for these things? Where did the money come from that the UNC, long before the election date was called, had already spent money to block spaces on radio, to block spaces on television? And the election date had not yet been called, and possibly at that time could have been as much as a year away. But they had already started spending money, and we kept asking where the money coming from. We haven't seen the UNC having any fundraisers, while the PNM having fundraisers like September Fair at the Hyatt, while we were in government, right? When we were having things like that, car raffle and all of these different things, when we were reaching out to our supporters for them to pay their dues, we weren't seeing the UNC doing any of these things. So where did the money come from? We saw that one of the requirements to be screened by the UNC for the general election was that you had to pay out $2,000, right? For each seat that you wanted to be screened for, you had to pay a fee of $2,000, which means that the party was struggling for money then, or were they? Certainly, you could not have generated that kind of money from that to be able to run the kind of campaign that when you saw all over the country, big billboards, the East-West corridor, the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway was littered with these big billboards in one area, whereas a PNM candidate, like I had 3 banners. I had one big one by the intersection of the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway and Lisa Morris Julian Boulevard. I had one there. I had one down by the lights by on the dual carriageway down by the Larry Gomes Stadium, by the lights there, opposite Napoyo Court. And I had one in Dabadi. That was it. 3. Some PNM candidates had none. But yet still all these UNC candidates, big posters, several within the same vicinity of each other. And we kept asking where this money coming from. Who is funding the UNC? People ignored it. And today, we are seeing a number of projects that were never spoken about on the campaign. All of a sudden, landmark TT bond. All of a sudden, they're building housing using private contractors and telling us the contractors using their own personal money to build houses, not for the poor, not for the middle-income homeowner, but for the high-income homeowner, as they said, as the site for landmark TT says, luxury living redefined. Building gated communities for the wealthy. That was never mentioned on the campaign trail. But they accused the PNM of wanting to make the rich richer. PNM never built a house for the wealthy yet. Never used state lands to build houses for the wealthy. To say, well, you know, and we need to. No. The focus was always on the mandate, the primary mandate of the HDC, which was to build low and middle income housing. Never to build houses for the wealthy, the people who could afford to go to the bank and get a mortgage for $2 million and $3 million. But they are building houses that starting at a cost of $2.2 million, starting at a cost of $2.2. Which poor man could afford that? So that when that is where the government is putting its focus and telling you nonsense about, well, there's no state money involved, no taxpayers' money, the contractors bringing their own money, but you're giving them land that should be used to provide housing for low and middle income persons. Because every week people come in to me to tell me application inside 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, 30 years. And they know that they are now at that age where they can no longer qualify for a mortgage because they don't have that much time left in terms of qualification period. So TTMF is telling you, well, 65 is the cutoff age. So if it is that you're 55, you're not going to get a 10-year mortgage. So you need to add your child to it and switch over and pass on the application to your child and hope. But meanwhile, the government is using, because land don't grow, land is finite. And when you use prime real estate to build houses for the rich at the expense of the poor, there will always be people who living in hope each and every day that, hey, I might get a call one of these days. I went by the MP to see what the MP could do if he could advance. I have been writing letters to the HDC, and all I keep hearing, well, you know, the applications are inside, and it's a lottery system, and whatever, and that's that. And that's it. But these people who could afford, right, to go to the bank and buy a house, $1 million house from the many private housing developments that currently exist, that is where their priority is. But coming back to the point that I was making, right, with respect to the Attorney General and the information that he put out. So one, my concern is that people's confidential banking information is being leaked to members of this government. And you should be concerned about that. So it means then that they could just decide, hey, give me the banking information for so-and-so. I feel he's a PNM supporter, and we want to do some damage there. Give me the information for this person. You have any accounts with us, with your bank? All right. Call the next one. We want to know this office holder or that office holder wants to get the private banking information of so-and-so. And because these two main banks, these two big banks that are controlled by the state, right, should be concerned about that. Because if I put you on the board and I want information, give it to me, or else you could find yourself removed. And since you love being a director on the board and boasting, I'm a director on the board of so-and-so and a director on the board of so-and-so, you're doing it because you supporting that party, and anything that you feel could assist that party in staying in power for 10 years, 15 years, because you feel if you could do damage to the PNM, and PNM supporter, and people say, well, look, boy, right now, under this administration, supporting the PNM is a dangerous thing. Yes, forget that way, wash your hands of it. What are you supposed to do? Where is the concern about that? Right? From all of the members of the Fully Dones who supported your party and the leadership of your party when they claimed that the PNM would use legislation to go after them and their financiers and their supporters. What do you have to say now? The other thing we should be concerned about with respect to the statement made by the Attorney General just now is that he's creating a situation where you're impugning the integrity of the banks. Because when people, as I am saying now, would think, well, is it a case that the bank is feeding information, people's private information, banking details to members of the government, members of the political directorate, and should I be concerned that I need to draw my money out of this bank and go put it in a bank that the government doesn't have any involvement in? Do I need to do that? These are the things that cause runs on banks. And let us not forget, both First Citizens and Republic Bank, both of them have shares on the stock exchange. Okay? And these are the things that could pull down the share price of these banks. It doesn't even have to be fact, just perception, as the saying goes, is reality. Because we are concerned that the Attorney General sees no issue with coming to talk about who was getting 100, while he called no names, to make a generalization that people were going and spend $100,000 and in US and so on. So let me come to that issue. Clearly, the Attorney General's specialty is law, and he should stick to that, not banking. As a former banker, let me help him out with respect to that issue that he raised there. So he is saying these fellas had access to 100,000, no limit. They could just go abroad and swipe their card, spend 100,000 US and come back and pay it off and then go again. How are they paying it off? What are they paying it off with? That's the first question. Now, he made mention, he gave an example, whoever it is he was talking to, he said, your limit might be 500 US. Mine is a little more. Now, he wasn't talking to an ordinary citizen there. He was talking to one of his parliamentary colleagues, perhaps one of his cabinet colleagues, a minister. That's not ordinary citizen. But in that example that he gave there, that your limit is 500, mine might be a little more. How come yours is a little more than your colleague's, Honorable Attorney General? You are a member of parliament. You are a cabinet minister. Your colleague is probably a cabinet minister or a member of the government. So how come he doesn't have access to the same limit that you do? Is it because the same discriminatory policy that you are condemning now and saying that happened under the last, that this government will not tolerate because it is unfair? The same discriminatory policy that you're condemning and accusing the PNM of indirectly, is it that you are the beneficiary of that same discriminatory policy because of the office you hold or how much money you have in the bank? Do you have to go and stand up in the bank, sir, to ask for 200 US? If you go to the bank and say, I need 1,000 US, will they tell you, well, no, you can't get it, all you can get is 200 like everybody else? The limit that you have, that you admitted, you didn't see what it is exactly, but you said your limit might be a little higher than your colleagues. You said that confidently. What's your limit? Does the average citizen who said it is unfair that they have to go and line up for 200 US, could they get the same limit that you have, sir? Can the average citizen that you're defending go to the bank and say, I want the same credit card limit, US limit as the Attorney General? Could they do that? Why don't you pick up the phone and call the bank and say, hey, what? The system under the PNM was unfair. That these men could get 100,000 US, no limit, could spend that. It is unfair and my government is not going to tolerate it. So give everybody the same limit I have. Everybody who has a credit card, could they do that, Attorney General? I just ask any question. So that when you want to criticize a system, banking system, without understanding the root of it, and you claim that it's discriminatory, basically, it is unfair to the average citizen, but you benefiting from it by your own words. I will go further. The reason why these businessmen could afford to go and spend $100,000 and why they would be given no limit in terms of how much US they could spend, Attorney General, and I'm speaking here from personal experience when I was in the bank, is that these men have that type of US dollar holdings in the bank, on their savings account, on their checking accounts. These men who are manufacturers, they have manufacturing businesses, and they don't only sell their products in Trinidad. They sell it throughout the Caribbean region and some of them beyond. North America, Europe, and other places. And when they sell their products outside of Trinidad and Tobago, they're not paid in TT dollars. They are paid in US dollars, foreign currency. So they open their bank accounts here, some of them. And when it is that their clients, their customers abroad have to pay, they would wire transfer US dollars into their account, their US accounts in Trinidad and Tobago. And when these men have big businesses, manufacturing businesses, like for instance, Charles Candy, I would have read an article, I think a couple of years ago, where the newspaper did an interview with the then chairman of Associated Brands, Arthur Lockjack. And he was making the point that his company, Associated Brands, does not have to depend on the local banking sector to access US for their business, because their business is generating US based on the sales that they make abroad. As far as Turkey, their products are sold in countries as far as Turkey. They sell their products in Panama, and Panama is only US dollars. So they're making their US outside. And when they bring it back here and they put it into the local banking system and they have it in the bank account, and a man say, well, look, I want to go abroad. I'm building a house. I just giving an example. I'm building a house. And I want to go abroad and purchase the fixtures for this house because it's cheaper abroad than I buy it here. And they have greater variety outside than they have here. So I'm going to go abroad and swipe my credit card and I'm going to buy all my amenities outside and send it back home, ship it back home to Trinidad for my house that I'm building or that I just buy and I'm renovating. How am I going to pay for that? So the man have big business, earning US dollars, sitting in his bank account in the bank. He might have 500,000, $1 million US, 2 million US, who knows? He say, well, I have all this US, I might as well. He can't go to the bank and say, I want 100,000 US dollars in cash because I'm going abroad to buy fixtures and amenities for my house. Even if the bank had 100,000 US in cash, the law would not allow him to travel with that much foreign currency, whether the law here or customs and immigration laws in the US. Right? They have limits on how much US you can bring into the country, you could take out as the case may be. So obviously he can't go with cash. So if he has all this money in the bank, goes to the bank and he says, well, listen, I'm going to shop. I have X amount of millions of US in your bank. I need to be able to access at least 100,000 on my credit card. You all can transfer the 100,000 from my bank account to my credit card. So I could go and swipe because you all have my money. I put my money here. I have X amount here and I need access to it. I recall when I was working in the bank, many times we had US dollar shortages. And these businessmen would come in with their invoices because they have to pay their suppliers. And they bring their invoices as proof to show, well, I need to do a wire transfer to XYZ company because I have this raw material to pay for, or I have that to pay for. And because of the amount that they needed, we would tell them, well, yeah, we don't have that right now. You have to go in a queue. And as soon as it becomes available, we will let you know. Sometimes that queue was 2-3 weeks, a month long. And every week they come in the bank or call in, just calling to find out what's going on. You all get the US yet? Because my supplier is on my tail and I need to get this done. And this is unacceptable. I have this money in your bank and you are telling me I can't get my money. You are telling me I have to join a queue to get access to my money that I put there. This is madness. You all don't want me to close my account and just give me all my money. Give me a check for all my money. This is what we used to be hearing. And so we there on pins and needles and only calling Forex. Mr. So-and-so came in and he said, anything else? Can you make an exception? Can he get a portion of it or anything? Because he wants to know because the suppliers want to know. It's been 2 weeks. It's been 3 weeks. That's how it used to be going. How do you tell somebody who has hundreds of thousands or millions of US dollars in your bank that they can't get access to their money? Is that fair Mr. Attorney General? Is that fair? Because the banks try to encourage them, bring your US. We don't want capital flight. Don't go and open an account in Bank of America. Don't open an account in TD Bank. Don't go and open an account in Chase Manhattan and put your money there to tell your customers to send the money there instead of sending it to Trinidad. No, bring it here. But when they bring it here, they can't get it. So as I said before, if you have that money in your account and you're going to shop and you want to spend 100,000, you can't go with 100,000 in cash. The only other facility available to you to be able to spend that money is for the bank to open up your limit. Seeing as how you have that money with them, they are holding your money, your US dollars, and you want to have access to it. So when the Attorney General wants to come and pretend as if he's so concerned about the small man who could only get 200 US and could only get 200 US, he don't have that problem. He does not have that problem. Mrs. Prasad Visasa doesn't have that problem. The same discriminatory policy he is a beneficiary of by his own words. And the reason why the average citizen can't get to go and swipe a card for 100,000 is because they don't have 100,000 US sitting in the bank. If they did, they could negotiate and get that because their money is there. But when you want to come and create this thing as if the PNM was doing something and the PNM was giving instructions that it assist, and these people were given unfair advantages and so on, has nothing to do with that. Their financial circumstance allowed it because they have the US in the bank. And it's very easy for you to prove. The same way you all are getting information about who was spending 100,000 and would come and pay it back and go the next month and do it again. Okay. Easy to get the information from the bank, tell you how much money these people have. Manufacturers. And Samakal has businesses throughout the Caribbean region. We know they have business in the United States generating US dollars. They have business in India. I imagine that they would be when they convert in their money, because the rupee or whatever it is has no value here. So when it is that money has to be remitted to Trinidad and Tobago, to their bank accounts, wherever, it's US dollars, so they have access to it. So you're saying they shouldn't spend it? Or if they should, how do you propose, sir, they spend that money? How should they get access to it? If they can't access it in cash, what is the alternative? Write a check? But if the check is drawn on a local bank, well, not the local bank, the correspondent bank in the US, they still can't go and write the check and go to the bank and cash it and then say walk around with 100,000 US. Most of these businesses wouldn't accept that amount of US dollars for purchase. So the best thing is the credit card. And then you get all the benefits of the miles and the points and whatever it is. So to make it seem as if this is something so terrible and this government is going to put an end to it. What are you going to put an end to? To the bank making these people's money accessible to them? Well, fine. When they say, well, if that is so, we will close our accounts, demand that the bank give us all of our US, whether they wire transfer or they give us a check, and we will go abroad and open a bank account in the US and we will bank there, capital flight. And we will tell all of our customers in future, do not wire any money to the Trinidad and Tobago account that you're accustomed to. Send it to the bank account that we have abroad. And further cripple the banking system as it pertains to the availability of US dollars. This is the common sense of this, the logic of this government. All for the sake of playing politics. Because if Foley Don's going to run with that, you hear the Attorney General say, them and them say we get 100, could I go and spend 100,000 US, and the average citizen had to be struggling to get 200 and they can't get 100. That's how the PNM was. Yeah, they was taking care of the people, the 1%, the owners. Right. Let me come to this article now. Today's newspaper. Yes, and of course, condolences goes out to the family of the late Oscar B, who I, based on what I'm seeing on social media, would have passed away. The circumstances of his death has not been reported, but as we know, he had been ailing for some time in hospital. I think he had suffered a stroke or something like that. So, again, condolences to his loved ones. Let's see. Slimy Show is saying once you declare, you can carry any amount. That declaration, of course, Slimy Show will require that you provide evidence or documentation as to where you got the US from, and more than likely they're going to ask you what you're going to do with it. Because the concern and the reason why they have put limits is because of the potential for money laundering. All right, so it's not that just simply you make a declaration and you can carry any amount. And given the difficulty in getting US dollars in Trinidad and Tobago now, I think even if you have the stipulated limit on you, they would still look at you with with some level of suspicion. Where you get this US from? What you going to do with it? Why are you carrying all this US cash with you? I will never forget 2012 when I went to China and I was on the Sky Bridge boarding the plane in New York, and there's a line of us, and US Customs and Border Patrol came through, and they had their dogs, their sniffer dogs, and there was a woman who was standing 2 places in front of me, and the dog came and the dog sniffed her handbag, and the dog kept there and he kept sniffing and started to make noise and stuff, and the Customs and Border Patrol officer asked her, "Ma'am, do you have more than 10,000 US dollars in your handbag?" And she said yes. And they asked her to step out of the line, right? And to follow them. So, just say, and yes, you could declare, but don't think that, okay, I make a declaration and that's it. You'll have 1,010 questions to answer. And if you can't answer properly, well, you're likely to have your money confiscated and you might find yourself detained for longer than is necessary. Assassination plot allegations in detention orders. Businessman Dominic Hadid, his wife Genevieve Hadid, and relative Star Sadga have been accused by the state of being involved in a conspiracy to assassinate senior members of the government. Not members, senior members of the government. Now, I don't know what it is with the UNC that whenever they're in power, all of a sudden, people want to assassinate members of the government. We saw it in 2010 to 2015, right? We were told 2011 that there were threats against the prime minister, assassination plot, all kind of thing, and all of that. Fast forward to today, nobody was charged. They arrested thousands of people, detained them for months, and then released them, and nobody was charged. And it ended up costing you, the taxpayers, millions of dollars in restitution, right? The fact that the government is issuing PDOs clearly says that they have no evidence. And as the current commissioner of police has reminded us on more than one occasion, intelligence and information is not evidence. We're still waiting for them to arrest the person who was supposed to use the rocket launcher, the RPG, to blow off half of the Attorney General's office almost a year ago. As it currently stands, the RPG, the rocket launcher, right, is still at large. The person who was supposed to do it is still at large. And the persons who were supposedly the masterminds behind bars who were organizing it 1 year later are yet to be charged. Further, Genevieve also called Genevieve Hadid's detention order specifically alleges statements, hear this, statements calling for the death of Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar. If the last administration was diligent as this government in detaining people who make any statements with respect to the Prime Minister or any government minister, or calling for the death of any senior public official, you would have had a lot of UNC supporters behind bars. Plenty of them, right? Because there are screenshots all over the place on social media of persons making comments calling for the death of the then Prime Minister, Dr. Rowley, and members of the government. Persons who were known to be supporters of the UNC, because when you go through their profiles and you see some of the other comments that they make, it goes on to say, these allegations are contained in PDOs signed by Homeland Security Minister Roger Alexander under the Emergency Powers Regulations 2026. The PDOs state that intelligence, not evidence, received by the state links the trio to an ongoing plot to murder government officials and destabilize the country through violence. An ongoing plot. When did this plot start? Listen further to hear the confusion here, right? Dominic and Genevieve Hadid, who were arrested by police at their Bayshore Westmoreland home last Wednesday in relation to the allegations, spent the first 3 nights of their detention in cells at the Carenage police station and the Woodbrook police station, respectively. Sabga, Genevieve Hadid's maternal aunt, was detained on Thursday, June 25th, and has been held in a cell at the St. Joseph police station. The Express understands that Minister of Homeland Security Roger Alexander had initially signed 3 PDOs on Friday night. However, changes were made yesterday after concerns were raised by prison officials and also attorneys for the detainees with respect to their detention at certain facilities. The trio was served with PDOs yesterday and transported from the various police stations to new locations where they will be imprisoned as investigations continue. The orders signed pursuant to Regulation 14 of the Emergency Powers Regulations 2026 direct that Dominic Hadid be detained at the remand prison Golden Grove, while his wife and Sabga are to be detained at the women's prison Golden Grove or at any other location designated by the minister. Dominic Hadid was supposed to be detained at the Eastern Regional Correctional Facility, but that was changed yesterday. Each detention order stated that Alexander was satisfied that preventive minor detention was necessary with a view to preventing the detainees from acting in a manner prejudicial to public safety. The detention orders represent the first official disclosure of the allegations relied upon by the government to justify the continued detention of the 3 under the state of emergency. You hear that, Bachelor? The detention orders represent the first official disclosure of the allegations relied upon by the government, not the police, the government, to justify the continued detention of the 3 under the state of emergency. You hear that, Bachelor? So it is the government that is satisfied. So these people are being detained at the pleasure of the state, the government, not the police. PDO states, according to Dominic Hadid's detention order, intelligence identifies him as being involved in an ongoing conspiracy to assassinate senior members of the government of Trinidad and Tobago and or other members of parliament. Well, if they say that the 1% are our owners and our handlers, well, clearly the other members of parliament is not us. Can't be the PNM. All right? Because why would they want to assassinate their property? The UNC say the PNM is 1% property. The PDO stated that the intelligence indicates that following statements made, here it is, following statements made in the parliament during the debate on the extension of the present state of emergency, the detainee expressed violent intentions by stating words to the effect that persons would be shot in their head. So I am confused because the article says that they were detained as part of an ongoing investigation into a plot to assassinate. But then this is telling us that their detention arose out of comments that were made based on statements that the Attorney General would have made during the debate on the extension of the SOE. Okay. Which was just a couple of weeks ago, right? So, what is this ongoing plot? I am confused. Because if the statements that you are alluding to were made subsequent to the statements that the Attorney General made, where he basically appeared to issue a warning or what may have been interpreted as threats to that particular community, talking about Tetron, a sell at Tetron, or weights, and all of these different things. And I know there were articles published in the newspaper subsequent to the Attorney General's statements where the media houses would have interviewed members of the Syrian Lebanese community who expressed concern about statements made by the Attorney General in respect to their community and reference to Tetron. And while the comments that they would have made may not have involved any violent rhetoric, I'm almost certain that perhaps when discussions were being held in private among members of the community about this latest development. You know, tempers would have flared and people would have probably used some curse words and made certain statements in the heat of the moment. But it appears that's what happens here, but I don't know. It added, intelligence further indicates that these statements were made in furtherance of a developing plan to target members of the government. In furtherance of a developing plan, I am again confused. This developing plan, when did this developing plan start? Was it after the Attorney General made his statements, or are you trying to link those comments to some plot that we heard about a whole year ago that the police commissioner told us was dealt with? Remember, Commissioner Guevara said so, right? The threats were dealt with when the Attorney General came and he held his press conference and he said, well, you know, if they hadn't dealt with it, right now, half of his building would have been blown off with a rocket launcher. So you all dealt with it, and is it now that you're trying to link these statements, alleged statements, with that plot that we were told about a whole year ago? And we were told that the masterminds behind that plot were persons who were incarcerated at the Golden Grove prison, that the persons who you identified based on the intelligence and information that you had were persons who were in the prison, on remand, some of them, and you moved them from the Golden Grove prison and sent them to Stobels Bay and Tetron. And no mention was made then about any 1%. So is that the ongoing plot that you're talking about? I'm confused. The detention order stated that Hadid is a person of substantial financial means and influence with the resources, access, and capability to facilitate serious organized criminal activity. Let me read that again. The detention order stated that Hadid is a person of substantial financial means and influence with the resources, access, and capability to facilitate serious organized criminal activity. So all the time, Mr. Hadid didn't get this money last week. Mr. Hadid didn't come into this substantial financial means last month. He didn't come into this substantial financial means 2 months ago. For the entirety of the 10 years that the PNM was in power, and even before that, because Blue Waters wasn't born in 2015. For those of us who know that Blue Waters previously, before they moved to Orange Grove, they were located by Piarco, what is now called Piarco Plaza, right? That is where Blue Waters was. And then they moved to their present premises. So Hadid didn't come into this substantial financial means and influence last week or last month. So for the last 11 years, for 10 years under the PNM, and even before that, when he had money, right? He never tried to use his substantial financial means between 2010 to 2015 when he had the money. He didn't try to use it then to facilitate any serious organized criminal activity. Between 2015 to 2025, he didn't try to use it to facilitate serious organized criminal activity. Up until the Attorney General made his statements, Mr. Hadid didn't seek to use this substantial financial means and influence to facilitate serious organized criminal activity. But he just wake up one morning and say, you know what, I have all this money, these serious financial means, substantial financial means and influence. Let me use it to facilitate criminal activity. Is that how it went down? All of a sudden, a respectable businessman, living his life, enjoying the finest things that life has to offer, right? Regardless to who in power, Blue Waters selling. To the point where they could give away water. You write to Blue Waters, you're having an event and you want some water donated, they're giving you boxes upon boxes of water. All these 5Ks you have all around the country now, water given out like that. Courtesy Blue Water. So they're making money and they can afford to give away. So what motive would he possibly have? What possible motive could he have for wanting to suddenly use his substantial financial means and influence to facilitate serious organized criminal activity? But we continue. Intelligence further indicates that his continued liberty presents a real and immediate risk of facilitating the execution of plans intended to destabilize the government of Trinidad and Tobago through violence. So you're holy man. You're accusing him of being part of a plot to assassinate senior government officials, members of parliament, and so on. So you put him through the ringer, right? Spend a night in this prison, spend a night, never in his life see the inside of a prison before, probably never thought he would see the inside of a prison before. And then, but you would have us believe that if you release him, he presents a real and immediate risk of facilitating the execution of the plan. So they just held him on suspicion, allegations of being part of a plot to destabilize the government of Trinidad and Tobago. And you're saying that if we release him, he's going to carry out this plot. Now that you know that a plot, a supposed plot, is underway, now that you have information, not evidence, information, as you say, that he is part of a plot, you're saying that if you release him, he's going to execute this plot? Let us assume that he, in fact, was part of a plot. Now that he knows that the plot has been discovered, he's still going to go through with it for what? To spend the rest of his life in prison? Make it make sense to me now. Bachelor, make that make sense to me now. Reason 424, if you're on, because I'm trying to avoid the comments to be distracted. Make that make sense to me now. Omari Hines, make that make sense to me now. If you are held, you are detained on allegations of you being part of a plot, a conspiracy to do something to commit a crime. Police interrogate you, they ask you questions, whatever, right? And then they tell you, like, go, we don't have sufficient evidence right now, so we let you go. You are going to go and carry out the plot. Now that you know that they know. That making sense? For them to come back and arrest you? Only in Trinidad. I continue. Right. So let me get this here, right? According to the PDO, a preventive detention order pursuant to Regulation 14 of the Emergency Powers is necessary to disrupt these plans and prevent him, that is Mr. Hadid, of public safety. What Genevieve's PDO states: the detention order concerning Genevieve Hadid contains similar allegations. It states that she has been credibly identified as participating in an ongoing conspiracy directed at the assassination of the members of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The order goes further by stating that intelligence indicates she made statements to the effect that the death of the Prime Minister, members of government, and members of Parliament was required following public statements made during the parliamentary debate on the extension of the state of emergency. It is further alleged that she is associated with other individuals involved in the conspiracy. So these people who have been running legitimate business for years, what they're trying to convince us of here is that the Attorney General made a statement in the Parliament a couple of weeks ago, seemingly targeting not them specifically, but the community to which they belong, which we know has well over 5, maybe about 10,000 or more members. So not them specifically, but they decide we're going to take one for the team. Yeah, we're taking one for the team. We are among the richest of the 1%. But we will take one for the team. And so we were so incensed. Yeah? That's what the police would have. That's what this is having you believe, right? That these people were so incensed by what the Attorney General said. They said, nah, enough is enough. We are going to risk it all. And all the money they have, all the property they have, the nice life that they enjoy, they're just going to risk it all to take one for the team, for the whole community, and plot to assassinate members of government. I don't know what's up on they selling that, but I'm not buying that at all. That makes absolutely no sense to me. None whatsoever. Because there is no statement, I think, any member of this government, and trust me, we sit in the Parliament all the time and the government throw talk for us and they say all kind of things. The worst of things. When the Attorney General said, I go to war with you, and I will go to war with you, and I will go to war with you. When the Attorney General probably I think is in the same debate where when it is that members on our side were engaging in crosstalk and so on, and he made the point that, unlike us, that, he something to the effect that some talk about little girls and behaving like little girls and all that kind of choppy talk, They say the worst of stuff. We don't take them on. Like, okay, it is what it is. Say what they want. And come and talk about who had CPEP contract and who this and who that and who get brief. All kind of nonsense they come with. We don't take them on. But they would have you believe that these three people were so incensed by the Attorney General making general statements about the community, decided that they were the ones who would represent. Okay. The intelligence, not evidence, further states or demonstrates that the detainee is associated with other persons involved in the conspiracy, and that her continued liberty creates a substantial risk that plans to carry out acts of violence against members of the government will proceed. Okay, let me read that again. The intelligence further demonstrates that the detainee is associated with other persons involved in the conspiracy. Who are these other persons and why have they not been detained? Why have they not been detained? They're still outside. So if they're still outside and they can carry out the plot without these people, so why haven't you detained the other persons involved in the conspiracy? Who are the other persons? Because even if they are trying to make a case that these folks were serious, even if statements were made and that they were serious about carrying out this plot, I don't think Mr. Hadid himself, if there is any truth to this, would have himself engaged in or actually carry out the plot. I don't think he would have armed himself and gone up to any member of government and attempt to assassinate them. Right? So clearly, if you are referring to other persons involved in the plot, it suggests, what is being suggested here is that he would have used his resources, as mentioned earlier, his money, to pay people to do it, right? So where are the people who he was going to pay? Where are they? Why have they not been detained? I'm confused. The order states that these alleged threats viewed in the context of the ongoing state of emergency and the surrounding intelligence constitute a direct threat to public safety and national security. Public safety? Which public? Because based on everything that I read in here, there's nothing here that says that the general public was in any danger whatsoever. So which public safety? Okay. It concludes that a preventive detention order pursuant to Regulation 14 of the Emergency Powers Regulations 2026 is necessary to disrupt these plans and prevent her, Mrs. Hadid, from acting in a manner prejudicial to public safety. What SABGA's PDO states. The detention order issued against Star Sabga alleges that she also played a central role in the alleged conspiracy. What conspiracy? According to the order, Sabga has been credibly identified through intelligence, again not evidence, received as playing a significant role in an ongoing conspiracy to assassinate members of the government of Trinidad and Tobago. The PDO further stated intelligence indicates she made repeated statements advocating violence against members of the government. So she made statements advocating violence against members of the government. Dramatic. Anyway, so it seems this all stems from allegedly statements made. So the AG say eating, members of the community, 1% community took an issue, probably having a discussion on it over dinner, over lime, over drinks, whatever. Man makes statements. This so and so they feel that so thing. I don't know. That's what it seems to me. The order states that those alleged statements were made in the context of discussions concerning the present government and demonstrate encouragement of collective violent action against members of the government. If that isn't reaching, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. Right? So apparently now, if you are having, and I am not saying that this happened, but they say they have intelligence, not evidence. And as the commissioner said, information and intelligence is not evidence, right? You can't charge people based on intelligence and information. You have to convert intelligence and information into evidence before you could charge, right? So right now they have intelligence, they say information, but no evidence, and they can't charge nobody. So PDO. And it is interesting that the police keep putting out statements reminding the population that this is just the normal course of an investigation. There have been there is no guilt or no, how I should put it, there is no finding of guilt here. This is just normal police investigation. So please be careful in the statements that you all are making, all right? What we're doing here is following procedure, but what is currently taking place does not mean that these people are guilty of anything, and we keep stressing that. Well, how come all of us stress that for other people? How come you all don't do that? So is it that you're making a case so that when eventually, or if eventually you have to let them go without charge, and they decide to exercise their constitutional rights to come and sue the state for the embarrassment that would have been caused to them, they could say, well, you know, it impacted their business, and a myriad of other things, that would be your defense? Well, we never said they were guilty of anything, and we were just doing our jobs, and we caution the public to be careful in their utterances, and to be careful in any assumptions that they may make based on what is happening. We never said the people were guilty. We never said so. But we'll see how far that will go. It also alleges that SABGA has access to persons capable of facilitating violent criminal activity, and that her conduct forms part of a wider plan to destabilize the government of Trinidad and Tobago. SABGA has access to persons capable of facilitating violent criminal. Who are these persons who are capable of facilitating violent criminal activity? Have you arrested them? Have they been held under a PDO for questioning? Just asking. Who are these people? Is it that these persons have a history of engaging in criminal activity that you could see definitively that they are capable of facilitating violent criminal activity? Have they shown themselves to have that propensity? Do they have a record, a criminal record of doing so? The order further states that the detainee and others possess the considerable means to implement such an attack. As with the other detention orders, the minister concluded that preventative detention was necessary to disrupt the alleged plans. The detention orders were issued under the Emergency Powers Regulation 2026, which permit the Minister of Homeland Security, Roger Alexander, to order the minister, not the commissioner, the minister, to order. So you understand that, Bachelor? When you're saying the police and anything, the minister say, detain them, the police have to follow orders. As the minister described himself, he's the line manager for the TTPS. He said that. Not me, his words, as attributed to him in a newspaper article. He said he's the line manager for the TTPS. I'll repeat that for your benefit, Bachelor. The detention orders were issued under the Emergency Powers Regulations 2026, which permit the Minister of Homeland Security, Roger Alexander, to order the preventive detention of a person if he is satisfied that detention is necessary to prevent that individual from acting in a manner prejudicial to public safety. So once the minister is satisfied, even if the police not satisfied, if the minister says, well, listen, you see, this how this thing looking to me, assign it, bring it. We'll deal with that after. Remember, once upon a time, under the last state of emergency, under a former Attorney General, who now getting briefs like that. Remember what he said? When questions were put to him by Dominic Calipasad, well, you know, you all are arresting all of these people and you don't have any evidence and so on, and aren't you concerned about the backlash? Remember what he said? Jail air make to ripe fig. Lock them up and we will find the evidence after. Lock them up and we will find the evidence after. You remember that, Bachelor? So when you want to come here and talk nonsense about the police and the PNM people naive and the police and thing, and the police is not government and government, lock them up and we will find the evidence later. Jail and make to ripe fig. And based on the emergency powers regulations as drafted by who? The government. Okay? They fashion their regulations to give power to the Minister of Homeland Security that once he is satisfied, not the TTPS, not a judge, not the DPP, once the minister is satisfied, as it says here, that detention is necessary to prevent the individual from acting in a manner prejudicial to public safety, and he sign off, the police have no choice but to go and execute that PDO, arrest the person, and take them to whichever holding facility for the remainder of the SOE, unless they have a good lawyer who can make representation to them before the tribunal and a decision is made to have them released. Each order recites the legal provisions empowering the minister to act. You hear that, Bachelor? The minister, noting that under paragraph 2 of the schedule of the recommendations, regulates detention order if satisfied that preventive detention is necessary. So the minister might be going through Facebook and he sees somebody talking a talk that is against the government, and they say something that he is of the view is a threat to the prime minister, and he might say, hey, send forward this to whoever. See this here? I consider this, I am satisfied. I am satisfied that that requires a preventive detention order. Do it up, bring it for me, let me sign it. The orders also cite paragraph 3.1 of the schedule, which provides that a person subject to a detention order may be arrested without warrant by any police officer and detained at the location directed by who? The minister. See how much powers the minister has here? So when they wanted to come with ZOSO, you see, at least with the state of emergency, it will come to an end eventually. Based on the law, has to come to an end if the government is unable to secure a further extension in the parliament, and which support they will not get from us. Should they come back in September, when the second 3-month extension would have expired, and they must now, the law says they must now come and seek a 6-month extension. And for such an extension, they require the support of the opposition. And we have made it clear they will not get that support from us. Because this government has used this state of emergency as a football, right? To play however they want. So first we heard it was because of a plot. Then we heard it's to treat with the crime situation, because every time the media asks them, well, tell us about what successes the state of emergency has achieved. All they keep hearing is, well, murders is down 42%, and this serious crimes are down. But that was not the original intention of the SOE. When you sent your documentation to the president, it did not say we are implementing a state of emergency because we want to bring down murders. We want to bring down serious crimes. That is not what you said. And it was very instructive when during the debate to extend this state of emergency, and the member for Port of Spain South, Keith Scotland, raised the issue that why are we now seeking to extend the state of emergency based on a reason that was given 3 months ago? And the Attorney General made the point, and he read the law, which says, reference that the president haven't been satisfied, whatever, with respect to. So it's an extension of the original state of emergency. So they were able to use the law and a loophole in the law that allows them to extend the existing state of emergency, which would have been based on something. So they are not required to now come and give us the reasons. They are simply extending the original state of emergency approved by the president based on information. And they are saying, well, we just continue in that. But the reasons for it differs, because the original intention, the plot, we ain't hear nothing about no plot. We haven't heard anybody get locked up. So when they have to account for successes of the SOE against the backdrop of the original reasons given, nobody arrested for attempting to assassinate any member of government. Nobody was arrested for plotting to use a RPG rocket launcher to blow off half of the Attorney General's office. Nobody arrested for that. But all we keep hearing, yes, the SOE was a success because crime is down, murder is down, serious crime is down. Yeah, but what about the reason for the SOE? The people who you say we're going to do this and do that. What about that? Any successes there? Have you charged anyone in relation to those to that plot? Well, no, we haven't. So then the SOE was a failure based on the original intent. Well, no, I remember serious crimes are, yeah, but that wasn't the reason why you all said it had nothing to do with crime fighting. So why are you telling me that it was a success based on something that it wasn't based on? So we continue. Never a dull moment in Sweet TNT. So we will see where this goes. Because so far, the majority of people that they've held under PDOs have not been charged with anything. They're just being fed 3 square meals a day, right? And they are detained at the pleasure of the state. And it's costing you, the taxpayers, money to feed these people and to house these people. It is taking a toll on the police service, because we would have heard the Trinidad and Tobago police service, social welfare people say that it's affecting the officers, it's affecting them mentally, it's affecting their home life when they have to be out there. It's taking a toll. The conditions, the prison officers are also affected. So it's having a negative impact. This is the first time in the country's history, I think, that we've been under a state of emergency for so long. I think. I don't know if during the Black Power time, that if there was a longer state of emergency, I don't know. I wasn't around at that time. Right? I wasn't born yet, so I can't speak to that. But this one, just imagine that. So, as I would have said in the parliament during the debate, on the mid-year review, the only thing useful that came out of the Standing Finance Committee was the statement made by the Minister of Defense, Wayne Sturge, that $2.5 million had been allocated for this year's Independence Day parade celebrations. And I did say, but we take that with a pinch of salt, because anything can happen between now and then, that could cause the government to say it is not safe for them to proceed. Remember last year they said it wouldn't make sense and it would be unsafe and unwise to have the entire cabinet and all members of parliament in the same place, because it would make it easy pickings for whoever wanted to do something, that they could take out all these people in one shot. And here it is, we have another plot. When UNC wins, everybody's supposed to win. Winners don't try to assassinate members of the government. Winners don't try to assassinate members of parliament. Winners don't do that. That is not the behavior of winners. So is it that everybody not winning? I'm confused. For 10 years or less under pressure, Rowley mash up the economy, the PNM mash up the economy. There's oppression. This government oppressing the poor. They only care about the wealthy. They're only doing things for the rich and the 1% to make the rich richer. And they don't care about poor people and poor people suffering. For 10 years, you all said that. Rowley was the worst prime minister ever. Fully done said that. Yet, nobody attempted to, there was no plot to assassinate Dr. Rowley. No plot to assassinate any member of the PNM, the last administration, for 10 years. No plot. Right? They cried, the Fully Dance cried, oh, Stuart Young have security, and how much minister have security? Who had security? The Prime Minister, the Minister of National Security, which Stuart Young was for a time, and then he became Minister of Energy, and he kept his security detail, and the Attorney General. That was it. Now in this administration, all these people, the Prime Minister have security detail. The Attorney General have security detail. The Minister of Homeland Security has security detail. The Minister of Defense has a security detail. The Minister of Public Utilities, the Minister of Rural Development and Local Government. All of these people. The Fully Done's complaining. You hear them complaining? No complaints. None. You had a problem at 4 under the last administration, but now more than 4. No complaints. No talk about how much taxpayers' money wasting to provide security for all these set of ministers. No. That's okay. Everything is justified now under this administration because their party in power. So anything, any port for a storm. That making sense to them. Right? But again, I ask him, if everybody's supposed to win, what is with all these plots? Why is it that whenever the UNC in power, somebody always want to assassinate somebody in the government? Nobody wanted to kill Rowley. Teddy Dr. Rowley driving around, he has no security. He's a normal citizen. Going to the gas station, going to the grocery, driving himself. Nobody want to do him anything. The government themselves, when they took away his security before the period, because I think he was supposed to, based on the law, he's entitled to have security up to 6 months after he demitted office as Prime Minister. They say, well, we did a security assessment, threat assessment, and nobody don't want to do here anything. So, yeah, nobody want to do really anything. So, no security for him. Cut it short. Same thing with Stuart Chung. We did a threat assessment. Nobody want to do Stuart Chung anything. They took away the security for both of them. So now the ordinary citizens, no biggie. So, is it that when Mrs. Prasad Bisesa demits office that she's going to need security for the rest of her life? With all these plots and plots and plots? Is it that all of these government officials against whom plots and plots continue to pop up, that when they demit office that they are going to need security for the rest of their lives because of these plots? And that the people who are supposed to be carrying all these plots will keep it at the back of their mind and still want to do harm to these people? Yet still, we saw one of the ministers who has, or is entitled to, well, not entitled to, who was afforded a security detail on the basis that they claim his life was in danger because of the closure of CPEP. We see video footage of him driving himself, going to a fast food outlet, purchasing food, jump back in his van, and nobody wanted to do him a damn thing. But he have security detail, personal security provided by the state. So you see them line up the corridor when you're going into the Parliament chamber. Everybody's security is there, who sit down on the side by the coffee machine, who sit down downstairs on the mezzanine. They're all over. All over. But the fully dance wouldn't say anything about that. Let's see what's the time there? Right. Okay. So just one more thing to touch on, folks, and then yeah, we will chat. As an aside, poultry depots across Trinidad and Tobago are experiencing a chicken shortage, which may lead customers to getting less product and a price increase. So look out for all your favorite fast food restaurants that sell fried chicken. Their prices may go up, right? Poultry depots across Trinidad and Tobago are experiencing a chicken shortage, which may lead customers getting less product and a price increase. This was confirmed by President of the Broiler Growers Association, Suresh Ramkisoon, in a telephone interview with The Express yesterday. He said there is a shortage and the cost has gone up, which will take a toll on customers. I don't have a reason for the shortage yet. One of the country's largest poultry suppliers, Arawak and Company Limited, also responded yesterday saying it was facing a foreign exchange challenge. Foreign exchange challenge. But I thought that was supposed to be fixed when the UNC came into power. Ramkisoon said everyone will feel the pinch of this shortage and price increase, and noted that the cost of chicken per pound increased from $8 to $8.50 and is now $9.50. There are also restrictions on the amounts of chicken the depot can purchase from suppliers, which will cause issues with pricing and availability. Some local chicken suppliers in TNT are Nutrimix, Arawak, and WGM. Ramkisoon believes the poultry industry needs an intervention and asks, when was the last time you have seen 3 chickens for $100? We need a solution for these price increases. We are entering the July-August vacation period and spike in tourism. There is an expected increase in demand, and now we have a shortage before us at this time. He noted that the poultry depot has been declining since the early 2000s, saying the industry has become unattractive to young people, causing the number of farmers to shrink. And he says farmers don't benefit from the 950. These reasons cause the industry to be unattractive. So, to the UNC supporter who, a few years ago under the Rowley administration, in the protest in front of the waterfront, was saying that they can't afford to buy chicken, they could only buy chicken's feet. But it seems you're going to have to go back to only buying chicken's feet because the price is about to go up. Thought your government had the solution to everything. Put them in power, they will fix it. Promise made, promise kept. That's what they say. What's going on with that? I just curious. Just asking. Meanwhile, they want to tell you that that inflation is down. And everybody asking which part? Where? Which grocery? Tell me where. So, let me get this here. Where is it? Let's see here. I see it there. Right.
Chairman of the North Central Regional Health Authority, Dr. Tim Gopi Singh, says he is pressing ahead for a forensic audit at the Regional Health Authority after uncovering what he described as widespread corruption in the nursing pool system. Speaking during NCRHA's public board meeting at the Eric Williams Medical Sciences Complex on Thursday, Dr. Gopi Singh said millions of dollars were paid in questionable overtime claims, with some nurses earning more than $70,000 in just 3 months.
About 8 of the list of nurses who were in the nursing pool receiving over $50,000 in a 3-month period. And 2 of these received over $70,000 for a 3-month period, which was equivalent to more than 400 hours per month in practical, and that was fraud.
Dr. Gopi Singh revealed evidence of what appears to be nepotism in how overtime shifts were assigned, and said one of the top earners was a 70-year-old retiree. He noted that overtime payments for pool nursing once totaled nearly $40 million under the previous administration. He added that the figure has since been reduced to less than $4 million, with the hiring of 78 additional nurses expected to bring further improvements.
The nurses worked very hard, diligently, but I was dismayed to find the real problems within that nursing pool. And we were supposed to act under the governance of the Ministry of Finance and the regulations which they stipulated that no nurse must receive more than $60 per hour for any school nursing, except in 3 categories.
In response to Dr. Gopi Singh's claims, President of the Trinidad and Tobago National Nursing Association, Edie Stewart, dismissed the allegations of fraud.
The association is really troubled that
Apparently, they need to send Gopi Singh to the TTPS, since he seems to be an expert on overtime fraud. He seems to be an expert on how to bring down overtime. And we would have pointed out in the recently concluded mid-year review that a request was made by the TTPS for further 100 million to facilitate overtime for the period July to September, right? So they anticipated well in advance how many officers will need to work overtime. Now, I played that specifically because there was one thing said there just now, that they were able to bring down the overtime bill by hiring an additional 78 nursing personnel, right? But as was stated during the Standing Finance Committee portion of the mid-year review, the Minister of Homeland Security, who is the line manager, according to him for the TTPS, indicated that the police has recruited additional officers, few hundred officers. Remember, they were supposed to incorporate the SRPs into the regular TTPS and so on. So based on what you just heard there, if you hire more people, as I said in my contribution to the debate, if you hire more people, your overtime bill is supposed to go down, not up. But the TTPS hired additional officers, and yet still the overtime bill went up from 418 million in 2025 to 500 million for the period 2025 to September 2026. Now, if we're dealing with that based on a quarterly basis, we're looking at $125 million a quarter in overtime. All right? That's over $40 million per month. Under Gary Griffith, it was $25 million a month with less officers. Under Commissioner Guevara, it's over $40 million a month with more officers. I'm confused. So maybe they need to send Tim, make Tim chairman of the Police Service Commission or something. I don't know. Give him some managerial post in the TTPS. He could work, he could be a consultant to the commissioner and see if they could bring down the overtime bill. Okay, Tim? Because since nurses making a certain amount of money had to be fraud, these nurses work very hard. Things that they have to deal with. All right? They probably work harder than the doctors. they see the patients more than the doctors, but the doctors making, some of them, well, making more money than the nurses. So I just throwing that out there to him. Maybe he could lend the expertise to the TTPS, right? Seems they need it. Let's see what it's saying here. So Ryan Spicer is saying, true, but it didn't fix during the last 10 years. The export, I guess they are not one of those businessmen with millions of US in the bank, even though they reported of getting most of the US. So the issue, now it is important to note, right? So Ryan Spicer is saying it went up for a minimum of 3 times under the PNM. I don't know what he's talking about. Let me see. People who commit the most fraud in Trinidad to be rolled up to save others committing fraud. Sarah Richards. Check your doctors who are charging for biopsy, and then I had to go to his lab and pay more to get my child's blood sample examined. Wicked and all being done. Surely Henry is saying that. And I think, of course, it's in reference to, you have a lot of doctors, in particular the specialists, right, who are on call in the hospital. And they work also in these private institutions as well. And for years, we've heard the claim of people going to the general hospital, the public hospitals, and the doctors telling them, well, you know, we don't have the wherewithal to treat you here, but you could go to this private institution and that private institution, and you'll get through. And you would have heard me tell you all this, the example of my sister when she was ill and they couldn't find what was wrong with her, right? And the private institution charged a whole set of money. She went to the public hospital, and the same doctor who couldn't find what was wrong with her in the private institution and charged a lot of money was able to find the problem in the public institution. So then I saying, Gopi saying COVID almost took you out. Stop and make peace with your God. Yes, we recall that. So it's the same man who went to the private institution and almost risked the lives of people, other people getting COVID as well. And you see, they will target the nurses, right? And the nursing pool, overtime fraud and whatnot and all kind of thing. And we need to hire more people. Okay, nothing wrong with hiring more nurses, all right? Because he was saying this, we need to cut the wage bill. But why isn't that the policy across the board for all ministries and all departments and all entities? Why are you targeting the nurses and not other public servants who are making ton of money? Because I have clients who are police officers, and I have seen some of them present a payslip. One of them, I remember the kind of money. I say, what? I say, but I'm in the wrong profession. I should have become a police officer too. And I said, but what's this? He say overtime. Okay. And let me say, I have nothing against the police officers, right? Police officers work hard. They do their work too. But I am saying, if you hire more officers, which this government has done, and they boasted that they hire more officers, that the last administration left the police service without its sanction strength, and they hired more officers, which means you have more boots on the ground during regular hours. There is no need. The overtime bill is not supposed to go up. And then you come to the parliament and tell us that the overtime, the 100 million, has nothing to do with the SOE. No overtime, additional overtime incurred because of the SOE that has been ongoing for several months. So, but you can't explain to me how the overtime bill went up when it is not related to overtime work during the SOE because of the SOE. And you hired more officers. How is the bill going up? But nobody questioning that. You just come to the parliament, the commissioner say you want another 100 million, we approve it. No questions asked. And when we ask questions, you all try to make it seem as if we have an issue. And we trying to deprive officers of, no, we are not. We are just saying that, make it make sense. The math's not mathsing. And it can't be that the math's not mathsing for the health sector with the nurses, but it's mathsing for other people. Let's see what it's saying here. The UNC are now in the chicken business. So let's blame the UNC for low supplies of chicken. Why the chicken did not cross the road? Because the UNC was on the other side. That is a comment from Winston Batchelor, for those of you who are not on the chat. All right, that's the question. So the UNC is not to blame, but when the PNM was in power, if a shortage, blame the PNM. Oh, yeah, the government was to blame for that. Yes, same Bachelor was among them who used to blame the last administration for every little thing that happened. For an exchange, you can't get US, blame the PNM, blame Rowley, blame the government. Now, the situation is even more acute. Don't blame the government. No, the government is not responsible for that. Don't blame the government. Don't blame the commissioner. Don't blame the central bank governor. No, the government is not to blame. Only when the PNM in power, then the government is responsible for that. Right? And then he will come and a response and give me some BS about the fallback argument. It's because the PNM shut down the Petrotrin refinery is why we have a problem with US. But for those of you who are regular listeners here would know that I would have read on more than one occasion, I'm just not in the mood right now to go and look for it, the press release that was put out by the Trinidad and Tobago Chamber of Commerce in May of 2014, where they were complaining about the US shortage then and the challenges that they were experiencing since 2012, and that several members were complaining of an acute shortage and the inability to be able to access foreign exchange to pay their suppliers. 2014, May. Two things to note there. The PNM wasn't in power in May of 2014, and in May of 2014, the Petrotrin refinery was up and running and fully functional. Yet still, the Chamber of Commerce, which represents many of the manufacturing businesses in this country, was complaining, writing to the government and put out a press release telling of the challenges and the troubles and the problems that they were having in accessing US. So I just preempted Mr. Bachelor before he comes with that bull spit about it's because the refinery shut down. That problem predated the Rowley administration. And as a former banker, and I can tell you that my time in the bank was before the People's Partnership. So this has been an ongoing problem. All right, but it became more acute under the People's Partnership. Okay? So before you come with that dotishness, let me stop you in your tracks one time. You all are so predictable. Spicer is saying, weak point, it's not the fact that if we should look at, it's if it's sufficient and if they're making proper use of their workforce. What did I just say? What did I just say? Under Gary Griffith, you had less officers. And the overtime bill was less. Now, under the current commissioner, you hired more officers. If you have more officers, it doesn't matter if you're using your staff efficiently. The fact of the matter is if you have more people, we know how overtime works. Who works overtime? Overtime happens when it is that you don't have sufficient staff to carry out the work during normal work hours, and therefore people have to work additional hours, sometimes beyond normal work hours, to be able to get the work done. Okay? So if you hire more officers, you have more boots on the ground. What do the police officers do? For most of the time, they're out on patrol. The majority of the police force, right? Because I think Alexander told us the figure is they requested an additional $20 million for uniforms, and he said that is to provide uniforms for 9,400 officers. Under Gary Griffith, it was about 6,500 officers. So if they are now at 9,400, assuming based on what Alexander said, that is an additional over 3,000 additional officers. Okay? So if you hire more people, your wage bill, regular wage bill is supposed to go up, not the overtime. Because you have more of it. It doesn't matter which shift you're running. It means every shift has sufficient number of persons to work regular hours. So if your shift is from 6 to 12 or 6 till, 2 o'clock the next morning, you have more officers working that shift. You don't need to tell anybody who was working in the shift before, well, hey, we needed to work an extra shift. No, we have enough officers to complement that particular shift so you could go home. We don't need you. Yes, you're supposed to have a day off or 2 or whatever it is. We don't need you to come out on those days because we have sufficient number of officers to be on the beat for that. So no overtime. Just say. Now if you tell me you have the officers who are the investigators with the number of murders, and you don't increase your pool of investigators, and you keep dumping more and more murder cases on the same officers, such that they have more work to do because they have to go out on inquiries and they have to do all of these different things. Yes, I could understand them. But just putting that away. Let me see. So he's saying this new one. He's trying to claim that everything is so wrong for the past 14 months. What have your PNM done in 10 years with the $600 billion? It was only a matter of time before somebody come with that nonsense. Well, first of all, let me tell you, the PNM didn't spend $600 billion, all right? Because if you arrive at this 600 billion, we know that's part of the UNC narrative. So you all adding 60 billion a year for 10 years. Okay? The last 60 billion, if to use your logic, was supposed to run from October 1st, 2024 to September the 30th, 2025. The PNM demitted office in April of 2020, but the 1st of May, 2025, right? So you see all the billions that was spent between the 1st of May, 2025 to September 30th, 2025, the UNC spent that. The PNM didn't spend that. So that stupid talk about 600 billion, disabuse yourself of that rubbish one time. So let me give you some other figures that you don't know. The TTPS alone, $1.2 billion. Listen to this, $1.2 billion just for this fiscal is for regular salaries, plus an additional $500 million in overtime. So that's $1.7 billion for salaries alone and overtime for the TTPS. We ain't talking about anything else to buy vehicles, to purchase uniforms. The uniforms is about another 30 million, and then they need money for to provide meals for officers and a whole set of other things that they pay for. Okay, so it's well over $2 billion a year the TTPS getting. So you want to check the 60 minus about 2.5 billion for the TTPS alone. All right, minus a further 12 billion a year in interest and principal to be paid on loans that were taken out not just under the last administration, but loans that the last administration inherited from the People's Partnership. You know, the loan to build the Couva Children's Hospital that they took from the Chinese, the loan that they took to build the National Aquatic Center, the loan that they took to build the National Cycling Center in Couva, you know, because everything was Couva, the loan that they took from the Chinese to build the National Racket Center in Tacarigua, all of these things, right? Loans were taken for all of that. And the PNM inherited that. Add the $6 billion that the PNM had to find when they came in 2015 to pay the back pay that they inherited, the back pay debt that they inherited from the People's Partnership, to pay the public servants, was it 13 or 14% increase that they got? And the back pay attributed to that was $6 billion. The PNM had to find that $6 billion. So minus that 6 from the 600 billion. Okay? So as I told you, and work out about between 10 to 12 billion annually to pay debt, interest, and principal. Consider the fact that the majority of the government's expenditure for the year goes into wages and salaries, transfers, and subsidies. Let me help you with what wages and salaries means, just in case you're clueless. Everybody wants to work with the government, whether it is you're working in the public service, you're working in a ministry, you're working in the regional corporation, or you're working on a state enterprise, or whatever it is, right? So the majority of the government's money goes into paying salaries for these people, wages and salaries, whether you're daily paid, fortnightly paid, monthly paid. Transfers and subsidies. What is that? You see the $1 the $1 reduction that you got in super, right? And you're making it seem as if that is the greatest thing ever to happen. Well, guess what? That is a subsidy that the government has to pay for between what is the actual price of the cost of a liter of fuel and what you pay at the pump. So if the actual cost, which is from production and then to transport to the gas station, if it's $9 is the actual cost per liter and you pay in $7, the government has to pay $2 for every liter that you buy. And every citizen who has a vehicle, every time they go to the gas station and they fill up, every liter that they buy, the government has to put aside a portion of money to pay the difference. So you pay a portion and the government pays the difference. Subsidy. All right? When you jump on the plane to go to Tobago, that is subsidy. When you jump on the ferry to go to Tobago and back, that is subsidy. When you jump on the water taxi to go from San Fernando to Port of Spain and back, that is also subsidy. All those things. Transfers, old age pension, senior citizens grant, billions of dollars. NIS, not NIS, sorry, public assistance, disability grant, all of these other grants. You want your roof leaking, you need a 15,000, or you need the house repair grant, the 50,000. All of these different things is what the government pays. So about 85 to 90% of the annual budget goes to wages and salaries, transfers and subsidies. But you come in here to ask me, what did the PNM do with the 600 billion for the last 10 years? Well, let me help you. The PNM built the Arima Hospital. They built the Sangre Grande Hospital. They built the Point Fortin Hospital. They built the Roxborough Hospital. They started the Central Block. They built the new airport terminal in Tobago. They purchased 3 brand new ferries. The Buko Reef, the APT James, the Galleon's Passage, and then they had to spend millions of dollars to renovate, to refurbish I think it was the TNT Express or the Spirit. I can't remember which one it is, right? Because the UNC, while they were in office, kept refusing to send these vessels for dry dock. And when the PNM came into power, there was no more extensions. So remember, one of the vessels was repaired and is in use now. And the other one, they had to sell it. And while it was on its way to its new owner somewhere in Europe, it sank in the middle of the ocean. So right now it's at the bottom of the ocean somewhere, housing fish and other marine life. Okay? They did that. So the PNM built 4 hospitals and they started a 5th one. In 5 years, Kamla Prasad Bisesa built 1 hospital, the Kuva Children's Hospital. Last I checked, 5 is more than 1. But I know when you all subscribe to Kamla-matics, it's a little different for you all to understand. Okay? The PNM built over 30 community centers in the 10 years that they were there. Right? The booster stations to improve the delivery of water, the water supply. Over 30-something booster stations. Yeah, money was spent for that too. Okay? Now, if you want me to, I could read out the whole list for you, all the different things that were done. Well, they like to say, oh, they didn't provide no laptops. 79,000 laptops were provided between 2020 and 2023. But they didn't know about that. But you see, I listened to Shampa Kojo. I think it might have been yesterday or day before. No, it was yesterday. She was on the one-man show, formerly the Barbershop, on 95.5, and she was talking to John Gill. And I listened to Shamfa outline a whole host of things that the last administration did. Things that I, with all my research, was not aware of. And what that told me, well, it just reinforced what I already knew. That the last administration, their biggest problem, and which is why the PNM is in opposition today, is that they failed to tell the population what they did. Because all these things I hear in Shamfa rattle off, things that were done in Trinidad and things that were done in Tobago. And I'm saying, how come the population didn't know about that? Because for years, the UNC, oh, the PNM do nothing, and what the PNM, name 5 things the PNM do, and the amount of things that they did and didn't tell the population. And we're now hearing about it after the fact. I know they fully done so say, but why they didn't talk about it? Because the PNM, unfortunately, is not big on that type of propaganda. So you see how the UNC is now using TTT as a echo chamber for UNC propaganda, hiring a set of UNC mouthpieces as radio talk show hosts to reward them for bad talking the PNM during the election. PNM didn't do that. For years, Sharon Felix, Pastor Google, was begging the government, hey, put us on 91.1. Put us on 91.1. No, we can't do that. How that will look? No, we can't, and so and so. Battling on 91.9 under Iowa George. For years, they're telling government, hey, what organize, start up a new radio station or something. No, we can't do that. We could do that. We can't do that. That is not the PNM way. But the UNC showing them how to do it now. So you have Stephen Rees, Opinion Box, Kingsley, David Welch, Lennox Smith, Andy Williams, whole set of them masquerading as legitimate radio talk show hosts on 91.9 and collecting a salary every month. State money, taxpayers' money to push UNC propaganda. And all we were asking the PNM to do is listen, just tell the people what it is you all did. Since 20 PNM, your public relations is weak. The UNC is slaughtering you all when it comes to social media and public relations. Here it is that they continue to spin a web of lies, misinformation, untruths, and your response to it is weak. And if it is you don't respond to it, then the general public will believe that what they are saying is the truth, because they will say, well, how come the government not debunking it? And they didn't see the need then to debunk it. As Shampa said, the PNM still operating in the Stone Age when it comes to the use of social media. We're trying to play catch up right now, right? But the UNC is miles and miles ahead, miles ahead. And it is the amount of lies and the amount of fake profiles that they have outside there pushing their propaganda. It's difficult to respond to everybody. So you just choose some of the more prominent ones and you deal with it. But some will slip by the wayside, and you never know. Sometimes it's a little one that you think is not important. Is that little one that somebody will use, and they will go down to the rum shop and talk about that. And 10, 15 men there talking that and hear that and running with it, And then they go in and spread it as if it's gospel. And before you know it, it spread like wildfire because you underestimated the power of that little thing and the impact that it had. So when Stuart Young told the population during the election campaign, put the UNC in power, and what will happen? They will end CPEP, they will end URP, they will end forestry. They said we were just fearmongering, none of that would happen. Don't take on the PNM. The government, the UNC wouldn't do you all that. Within a month of coming into office, that is exactly what they did. And then come and tell you what is corruption and the contractors, and it was the contractors benefited. But you didn't care about the over 11,000 workers, laborers who were impacted because you say 331 persons were involved in corruption. Up to now, you cannot tell us what the corruption was. Up to now, nobody has been investigated. Nobody has been arrested or charged with any corruption under CPEP. But you allocate 18 million in October to wind up CPEP and then come back in the mid-year review for another $3 million, right? To wind up CPEP, talking about you have administrative costs and all this kind of thing. And meanwhile, the former workers struggling, can't pay their bills, depression. I went on Friday, I was invited to speak as the Member of Parliament from Alabama-Moosica at a graduation ceremony for one of the primary schools in my constituency. And while I'm sitting there, they were calling up the students to come and collect their certificate and some little token or whatever it is. And I noticed that there were several names that were called and the students were absent. That was concern to me because, okay, if one or two absent, they say, well, maybe something happened that day, they couldn't come. But the fact that several names were called and the students were absent from what I consider to be a pivotal moment, a milestone event in their lives, they were absent from that. And I made inquiries afterwards, how come so many students were absent? And you know what I heard? Well, the parents couldn't afford. Some of them, their parents were previously employed with CPEP and URP and so on, and they indicated they don't have the money to pay for, because the school would have had little fundraisers to pay for certain things, the gowns and whatnot, but there were certain things some things that the parents would have had to underwrite the cost of, and some parents were not able to afford. And so therefore, children didn't come. And the school was well aware before that they weren't going to come, because when the MC was calling the names, as soon as the name was called, the teacher who was handing out would just turn to him and say, next one, next one, next one, next one. So they knew that these students were not there. So government policy deprived these children of a memory. That's because I can still remember my primary school graduation as clear as day. I could still remember it. But it have no do-over. It have no go-back. So these students who have missed out, why? Because you have a government who say, well, hey, corruption. You stop the program, you get them 1 month's pay, 1 month's salary. Tell them fend for yourself after that. How you eat for the next year, we couldn't care. How you pay your bills for the next year, we couldn't care. Go out there and look for work. Go and look for a job. Fight up with the next 15, 20,000 of you who we've also fired, right? And see who could, just like, you know what, the sperm racing to the egg, see who could reach first and get a job. And the rest of you all, well, just better luck next time. And I keep asking myself, if these ministers who are elected MPs, if they have office day, and these people who come and see you all on a weekly basis, as they come to see me, because it wasn't only all 41 constituencies had CPEP, but they still have CPEP and URP in Tobago. In Trinidad, because why? The UNC believes that CPEP and URP and forestry was populated by primarily PNM people. So you could get rid of those programs. It doesn't affect their vote because their supporters in the main weren't part of. That's what they believe. So and any way they believe that they could damage the PNM. So now when they used to claim, oh, the PNM used to be forcing CPEP workers and URP workers to attend the meeting, and if you don't attend, you could lose your work. Now when they see in the turnout at our meetings, what's the excuse? You can't say CPEP and URP. All them people fired. So how come the crowd's turning up at our meetings then? Paying people to do it? So we have money to pay people to come to meetings, but we can't finish Balize House? Make it make sense to me now. But that's UNC logic. I tell you. I'm not saying that is why I say UNC is out to pauperize Africans in order to make them naive once again and to use them for elections. And Spicer is saying Stephen Reese is not paid by the government. Also, he's a talk show host on 91.1 for free. Because I saw other people who are talk show hosts on the same radio station come on social media while they were in studio and hold up their contract and say, look, the contract here, and flipping pages and show. So Stephen Reese would have to be a damn fool to be coming on a radio station every day to talk for how many hours on behalf of the government, not getting compensated, and all the other talk show hosts getting compensated. Right? Yeah, he's a philanthropist. He's just doing it for the love of. And you would have us believe that because, but I don't know, I really don't understand all that. No. Right? Imagine Kingsley. Kingsley, bright one. I've listened to Stephen Reese. He have a little more sense. Not much more, but he have some sense more than Kingsley. He not getting paid. Mr. Spicer wants you to believe that he is not being paid. Right? But Kingsley do a live and showing you the contract with my contract here and I starting such and such day. So he getting paid. The rest of them getting paid. But Stephen Reese just have time on his hands to just come and do what it is he doing for free. Something wrong with all this. Ah, boy. Say now garbage collection in John Lane Extension in Dabari. Well, so here's the situation with that Mr. Spicer. All right. Because of challenges with respect to the UNC and the money that they've given to the corporation, because I suppose you do know that garbage collection is the responsibility of the corporation. Okay? Based on where you live, John Lane, that falls under the Tunapuna Piako Regional Corporation. So I am aware of the challenges faced with the garbage collection because it's not just your area alone. Several areas within my constituency have that problem. I have reached out to the councillors and I have also reached out to the chairman, and I have been informed that because of the cutback with respect to allocations by the government, all right, and right now the priority is to find money to pay salaries to the employees. We have, because notwithstanding the fact that we had the media review, monies were allocated, money is still yet to be released for some people. So for instance, you saw Trinbago, Carnival went since February, and only last week they got a $4.5 million to pay the band players and so on. But the prize monies for the bands and the band competitions, they were told, well, whole strain, you might get it in August. You might get it in August. We in June. You all came and asked for money. Ask for money for everything one time. But you come and you ask us a certain amount of money. Why? Because you don't want the budget deficit to go to the level that we, the PNM, told you it would go to. So you're telling people whole straight. So we get a little kakara, a little thing. Pay what you could with that. And we will fool you up and tell you August. But then end of August is just around the corner from September. And budget is due in October. So we will drag it out until then. Right? And then we declare, well, that's the budget deficit was significantly less. And debts that should have been paid in this fiscal, carry it over to next fiscal. Creative mathematics. We call that deception. But fear not. As soon as they get some monies, right? and that they are able to pay the contractors, because right now some of the contractors, because they are owed millions of dollars, they kind of, say, well, pay me a little something from what you have first, and then we'll continue to do what we have to do. So I am making representation. I've had conversations with the minister, but as you heard, she continues to dispute what the chairman and mayors of the PNM corporations are saying with respect to instructions being given to use monies that were allocated to them to pay the increase in salaries and so on as a result of the 10% increase and all these different things. You would have heard the mayor of Port of Spain say he has no money to pay salaries for this month and going forward. Right? I was one of those who asked the minister during the mid-year review, but we see here $106 million allocated to regional bodies. Is that additional monies to pay for goods and services and so on? And the response was, no, that is to pay the back pay for councillors as a result of the pay increase that they were supposed to have gotten under the last administration when they would have announced the local government reform and so on. So that is the payback pay and I suppose the increase or whatever it is. So when we asked the minister, so what about the money for garbage collection? What about the money to buy materials, to patch the roads and all of these things? And she said, well, we will try to see how much of that 106 we could use for that. And then we also have the internal operations and how we do things, and we could move money from here. And so we will see now what could happen. No commitments, we will see. So, but I will relay your concerns again to the powers that be, and let's see how quickly we can get it fixed. I also have challenges with water. I think in John Lane as well, you all have problems with water. In Darwell Gardens, in Reed Lane Extension, Boys Lane, all of these areas, challenges for water. I have been liaising with the WASA personnel with respect to that, and they have told me the challenges that they are facing. And they will try to see how best they can remedy the situation. In fact, they told me Darwell Gardens was supposed to get water today into tomorrow. So I have conveyed that information to the residents who have reached out to me. But the WASA rep has said to me, if there are persons in dire need, reach out to him and he will try and see if he can provide them with a truck-borne supply in the interim. So if you all feel I'm not working, I'm working. It's difficult to work with this government. Jenny.
Hi, good afternoon, MP Romain.
Greetings.
Hi, good afternoon to all those who have joined us access today. Well, we're coming up close to African Emancipation Day, so I'll just drop in a quick little African history for those who may not know but already know. Our storytellers were called griots. It didn't spell like how I'm pronouncing it. It's actually G-R-I-O-T, right? But
yes.
It's pronounced griot. And they are the ones who would tell our story, just like the Calypsonians who came after. They told our stories, whether cultural, historical, traditional, yeah? And then now, in the Caribbean sense of it, there's a saying that they would say after you finish with a story, crick, crack, monkey, break your back on a rotten pomaraca. So sometimes these stories are here coming out of this country, now you'll be waiting for the call and response, crick, crack, monkey, break your back on a piece of pomaraca. Because it'll sound so incredulous, you'll say, that can't be true, but then again, the sad part is sometimes it is. And that's where we are now, because people, like they didn't realize, voting or not voting has consequences. But I will continue. PSA, I'm sure on this, on your live now, there are lots of public officers and a lot of public officers who may have retired. And I want to ask them a question. When Felicia Thomas and Leroy Batiste, who is now the Minister of Labour, was going around before last year, I think March the 10th PSA election, telling people that if they vote for the UNC, that UNC is offering 10%, because the PNM was wicked and bad, giving them 4% for 6 years. We won't go through all that again. But it was saying 10%. I want to ask the members of the public service who are members of PSA and those who are retired, was anything in there that states that you'll get food cards and you'll get fuel, money to pay fuel, or we'll get non-cash items, which has now come to food card, were we told that they will get partial payment of your 10%, which will represent that $20,000, which represents 40% and the 10% and 60% is no non-cash. But the thing that is really body with the food cards. How it reach the food cards? So instead that public officers all have to go and line up in social development, public officers who work in it to receive food cards taken away from people who actually that was designed for the less privileged, not working or anything like that. I'm not saying public officers are not deserving or something, but how we reach the food cards? Because if it was food card and non-cash, I'm sure if Felicia Thomas and Louis Batiste had told public officers, here, if you vote for the UNC, you get 10%, but if you have 10%, 40% is cash and 60% is non-cash. So you could get food card, you could get. I am sure nobody was going to buy that. So again, public officers, please have pride in yourself. You're an important part of this whole system. When there was no government in 1818, it was the public officers who made sure that this country was run properly and people were getting paid and everything. You are important. Do not sell your labor for nothing, right? You're being deceived. Okay, I move on. I saw the Honorable Marvin Gonzalez calling for unity in the PNM. And that is good. There should be unity in the PNM. And I heard the political leaders speaking about something they kept coming together, and all that is good. But I want to let Honorable MP Marvin know, along with the political leader, if you would treat those things that over the last year would have been so emotional for members of the PNM, whether who vote, who didn't vote, who didn't like one, who didn't like who, because I hear MP Marvin talk about that, you don't have to like this one and that one. Oh, I hear all that. But you're not treating them with issues. PNM makers know, and the issues can't be just because of Stuart Young and Dr. Rowley. But when you speak about the other factors, you are called penny haters. You are called you want to destabilize the party. You call you want to mash up the party, and all kind of insulting things. How you want to build unity in that when they in leadership refusing to acknowledge or accept any kind of responsibility? So I just want the leadership of the PNM to reflect. The back in times is good, and the meeting here, there, and everywhere is good. But reflect on where you would have went wrong. And before I end, I want to just say that you want to go on unity, but imagine, I'm making an observation. They went down to Marabella to have a meeting. Really nice, good meeting. But isn't Mr. Mannings, who the only person from the Southland win his seat, Brian Manning, that is, isn't his constituency, I think, close to or something to Marabella, or he lived close or something?
Yes.
How come he wasn't allowed to speak? Don't you think the people in the Southland would have appreciated Brian Manning, who is the only one bringing home the seat from the South, standing and speaking to his constituents and all other constituents? And I'm asking, was he being victimized because he wrote a letter concerning discrepancy in the list, the voters isn't PNM because his constituents and they are Lutheran there. So I want to tell MP Marvin Gonzalez, think about all those things before they start to talk unity. Because all the terms alone, if all of us have to be a part of the unity. And for the Mr. on the chat, Mr. George, don't judge people by your standards. UNC are paying me, could never pay me. Not even PNM could pay me to speak and have my conversation as I have to know. I do this for free. I do it because I'm a patriot. I do it because I'm convicted in my beliefs, and I talk because it's the truth that I'm speaking. I'm not lying on anybody. So let's stop that foolishness. And somebody disagree, it's because it's UNC, and they should stop that foolishness because you will have Mr. Victor Roberts, who was dragging forth last year and saying all kind of things about the PNM. It's his right to do so if he chooses to do so. It's a democratic country, right? He was dragging forth, cussing Dr. Rickles and everybody, and he's welcome with open arms in the PNM. But that's not really an issue because the PNM has said it's an inclusion. include everybody. And if you see the lighter and you see things different, that's quite okay. It had another one was cousin in Sandy Grande. And she's welcome. Nothing again is wrong with that because anybody could change their mind, whatever. But when you have the people in the PNM, because there's no communication department in the PNM, if they have nothing, like a one silent, no, there's no SMO, there's no PRO, there's no nothing. If it wasn't for people like you and others, you will know nothing. People wouldn't be informed on nothing. When they're not doing anything, and the people out there promote educating people on the PNM policies is important thing, or there are people in there. But people who sell the PNM and promoting the equality, or literally hugging them up and it's no problem. Again, I say, the PNM is open to whoever, whenever, because it's a kind of party, a national party. But don't cost those who have been standing in defense of the People's National Movement, and people who have been cussing them, or they're just hugging up and loving. That's not right. So when I talk unity, take all those things into consideration, MP Marvin. Thank you so much, Dominic. You'll have a blessed week. Everybody ahead. Bye.
Thank you, Jen. Brian.
Good afternoon to you, MP Romain.
Greetings.
Your sister Jenny just stole a little piece of my thunder. Because I, too, had a concern when on last week Thursday at the meeting in Marabella, when I saw those who spoke, I was very concerned, and I will tell you why. When I looked at the map that they normally put up after a general election, and I saw the map of Trinidad, south of the Caroni Bridge in yellow, except for one little piece, I had to be very concerned, because never before have I ever seen that with respect to La Brea, especially, and Point Fortin. And therefore I knew that there's cause for concern within our party, our great party. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
But when the PNM came down to Marabella, and certain people did not, I waited, and certain people did not speak, I was very concerned. I started to ask myself questions. Because the only representative that we have from the lower house in San Fernando, south of the Caroni Bridge, is MP Brian Manning. And I wondered why he did not speak. I said, well, okay, maybe he had to go out or something, I don't know. But he didn't speak. And then I asked myself another question. But we have a senator, we have Senator Alwari, but he didn't speak. And his family is a prominent PNM family. Diane Sukaran and Nandi Sukaran. And there's a street name after this prominent family in San Fernando. And he's a sitting senator, he's a senior senator at that. A senior person in the party. He didn't speak. And then I asked myself another question. While Councillor Lynch did speak, and she's the deputy mayor of San Fernando, where was the mayor of San Fernando to give greetings on behalf of the people of San Fernando? No, I saw Mukesh Ramsingh speak, but Mukesh Ramsingh is just an ordinary member like me. Yes, he did go up for an election on a PNM ticket, but he lost. So how come he made the platform? And I was just asking myself these questions. I said, all of a sudden, he just come up and he was given an opportunity to speak. I shared my concern, and I was saying, listen, if it is we need to keep San Fernando, just now it's local election. Every time there's a local election, we lose a seat in San Fernando City Corporation. And we already know what this government is attempting to do by moving the goalposts with respect to the voting the local elections coming up shortly. You even spoke about it in the parliament. Because they have formed their committee Fernando, the city, the great city of San Fernando, to have a meeting. Where were these representatives from the great city of San Fernando to speak on the platform? And I really and truly have a concern about that. And then I knew what Brian Manning had written publicly. And I asked myself the same question that Sister Jenny was asking. Was that the reason why he did not speak? But I said, nah, man. I put it off to, well, maybe he had to go out. Maybe he had to take his wife or his mother out to dinner or something as the case might be, and he couldn't make it. I don't know. But where was the mayor to offer greetings? Where was the mayor? Where was Senator Faris Alwari? Okay, Dr. Mukesh Ramsingh was no portfolio whatsoever. Has not been in the limelight as far as I know. Maybe he is talking in the constituency that he would have lost in. I don't know. But he was on the podium, he was on the platform. What is his portfolio at this point in time in the hierarchy of the PNM? And I'm asking myself these questions. And this is not looking good, especially in South. Because when I look at it, I suggest to you, when I look at the map is yellow. With a little tinge of red. A tinge. And it's a bright yellow, so you can barely see the tinge of red in San Fernando Beach. So who's stifling who? And that was my concern on Thursday night. That's why I waited till the end to see exactly me wrong, and my anticipations and my perception is wrong. So that was my concern. I thought I would talk about it on your program today. Yes, that we have to buck up. And we can be holding grudges and holding these type of things and preventing our senior personnel, our people who are well known in the great city of San Fernando and in South, from speaking to the people of South. I have no problem with Senator Boudou and others speaking because he was a very laudable contribution and so on. But at the end of the day, we have people in South that could speak as well. And that was my concern. My second concern is this, because you alluded to it earlier in your program. When Senator Sobers, MP Sobers, attempted to ridicule, remember for Port of Spain, North, St. Anne's West, about how they are speaking to people with respect to gas. And we don't have to talk to Delcy, but we don't have to go to Venezuela because there are other ways and means of talking to people. I say, well, hold on. Because when Olia wanted the OFAC license, did you all talk to Little Marco on Zoom? Or did Kamala Prasad jump on a plane and headed to Washington, and after Washington took a train to go and speak to Little Marco? When she wanted to talk to the President of the United States in Miami, in that particular meeting, didn't she jump on a plane? Why didn't she talk on Zoom about the OFAC license? Because it was important that she had a face-to-face meeting with the people that matter. So to come and ridicule MP Stuart Young that, we don't need to go to Venezuela to talk to Delcy, and we talking to people via other means. You're talking about gas, which is the most important thing to Trinidad and Tobago at this time, as far as our U.S. currency and our monies and our economy is concerned. And you're telling me you're talking to people in Venezuela and other means, and you had to talk to Delcy? Who fooling who? So you can fly thousands of miles away to talk to Little Marco, but you can't fly. But you can take a pirogue and go and talk to Delcy, but you can't do that because you're persona non grata. So who fooling who? Thousands of miles away, or they're jumping on plane to go quite to Washington, and then jumping on on a train to go and meet the people that matter to talk about the OFAC license. But just to talk and send a delegation across 7 nautical miles away to Venezuela. Up to now, you all can't do that. They're trying to fool the people and say that, oh, Stuart Young don't know what he's talking about. I said before, when you are talking about these type of issues, you need to be at the table. You don't talk on Zoom, you don't talk online. You have to be at the table because these are important issues to the economy of our country. The downstream industries are beginning to get more and more worried, and they may very well pack up and when he left, as we already know, Nutrien is gone. They may come back, I don't know, but we don't know when. Now we don't know what, as you rightly indicated on one of your programs, when the first gas does begin to come, the first thing that Shell are busy going to do is to make sure that they see about their people first, their investors, and make sure they get back their money. So when are we going to get anything at all, which might be just about 10% of trains 2, 3, and 4, which Dr. Rowley and Stuart Young have gotten for us? That is all we may very well get, and that may not be enough to redevelop and to re-enhance the economy of Trinidad and Tobago. And then what price will we be paying for the gas? You don't talk these things via Zoom, via online, and talk to Raul, you talk to the Minister of Energy, and who the Minister of Energy is? The President of Venezuela. So they could jump high, they could jump low, they don't tell us who they're talking to. But I am of the view they're not talking to anybody. Because as you alluded to again today, by the mere fact that there was no response from the President, she responded to everybody else that wrote her. Everybody else has sent condolences and greetings and so on. But none to Trinidad and Tobago. And the people of Trinidad and Tobago continue to be fooled and accept that you could fly to Washington, you could fly to America. You can't even take a little plane or a little boat and go to Venezuela and talk to them. And we all know why. So if people want to believe that this government is doing such a fantastic job, and all is well, and don't worry, getting gas just now, well, the whole strain nurses, whole strain teachers, and according to Comrade Roger, the other 14 people who are looking for the 10%, the other 14 unions, all your whole strain. Up to now, I wonder if the members of the Port of Spain Corporation get the story yet. Going. I wonder if they've been paid, because according to Big Bird, I'm not Big Bird, sorry, the Minister of Rural Government, I wonder if money is in the bank yet. Because you're telling the mayor that money reached already. How you know that? But up to now, people haven't gotten the monthly salaries for the end of June as yet. What is he keeping it back for? He never kept it back before. But you say he get it already. What evidence of that? We don't want to know how it comes about after the media review of what has to happen. We're not concerned about it. I don't know. Or it has to be assented to, or it has to this and that to send, it has to be gazetted. We don't want to know all of that. We want to know the money is in the bank account so that the workers can be paid. That is the issue. What you do, that is your work as governor, as a government. As a government, that is your so that the workers can be paid. They're not concerned about how it get there. They want to know when they're going to reach in their accounts and reach on time. Because I'm damn certain that yours, Madam Minister, you have already gotten yours, and you don't have a problem. The same way you get your back pay in full, in cash. And now offering, according to Sister Jenny, food card that keep everybody else hungry and starving. And all they want is the money they work for. It's a crying shame. And if people don't want to believe that there is financial difficulty in this country, and the government continues to fool us, then hold on. Next budget will be in less than 3 months. Let me see what more they're bringing to this country to stifle the people who they are already stifling in Trinidad and Tobago. Because even in Tobago, according to there's trouble. Even in Tobago. Because when you hear a king hiring no more, there'll be a freeze on hirings. What does that tell you? What does that tell you? You know what it's telling me? Money done. That is why there's a freeze on hirings. And you cannot pay. But it is what it is. We have to be very, very careful, people of Trinidad and Tobago. Very mindful. Because it is all coming to a head. Thank you very much, Dominic. Have a good evening.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I shall take my leave. Just to respond to Winston. I don't know what charges he's talking about against Mr. Hadid. Mr. Hadid has not been charged with anything. All right. He is detained. There are no charges because he has not been charged with anything. If you want to say allegations, you can say that. But he has not been charged with anything. So I don't know what charges you're talking about. And there's nobody is defending any 1% here. All right. The Attorney General opened that door when he said what he had to say in the Parliament and created a narrative in the public space that this government has some sort of agenda with respect to the Syrian Lebanese community. And they are trying to fashion that against PNM, trying to say, well, okay, they are the PNM handlers and PNM owners and so on. Who are the owners and handlers of the UNC? We are seeing a $3.4 billion landmark TT contract pulled. Well, you're quiet about that. I didn't see you say anything about that, Winston. What was the cause for that? No public money is involved and everything was above board and it's just the PNM being mischievous and so on. It wasn't the OPR that gave instructions to pull it. The HDC took that initiative on their own. No talk about that. I just throwing that out there for you, right? So when you want to come with anything about PNM and what kind of shopping is about the 1%. I don't have to go through again to tell you how the 1%, the so-called 1% benefits more when the UNC is in power. Keith Rowley never had a 1% in his cabinet. Talk to Kamla Persad-Bissessar. Eli Zakuru, 1%. All right? Jerry Hadid in her last cabinet, 1%. Just thought I'd throw that out there for you, in case you all forgot. Let me see here. So I'm seeing Anthony Beach is saying Brian is not the MP responsible for Marabella. Faris wasn't present as he was representing the Hadids in Port of Spain. Both the chair of the constituency and the councillor for Taruba, Koki, spoke. Okay. Mr. Beach is also saying that the UNC slammed former Energy Minister Carolyn C. Persad-Beachan for meeting with him during 2010 to 2015, so that would be impossible. Right, so let's see here. So Banmana is saying, so what happens if TT economy crashes? Well, and didn't Dave Tancrew say that the PNM crashed the economy last year when he spoke during the last year's media review? He kept saying that PNM crashed the economy, PNM crashed the economy. I told him, I said, you can't be saying that as a minister. As a Minister of Finance, you should not be saying that the economy was crashed. So, I don't know, you're talking about a crashed economy under the PNM, crashed economy under the UNC. I don't know. So, the PNM was on the road, contrary to what the UNC supporters like to say, right? Because it's convenient for them to say that in support of their government, that the PNM mash up and the PNM destroy the economy. But ask them, how did the PNM destroy the economy? They can't tell you, because it's just a talking point. They'll come and tell you nonsense where the PNM shut down the train system, but when Patrick Manning sought to bring back the rapid rail, which was an advanced rail system, they didn't want that. The UNC asked that. They talk about the PNM and diversification of the economy. When the PNM wanted to diversify the economy, the first instance through the construction of the smelter plant. You know how much money today we could have been making, how much foreign exchange we could have been earning through the aluminum smelter plant. They come and they tell you, hey, the smelter plant will give you cancer and kill you. We don't want no smelter plant. What did they do? They came into office. The cabinet of the People's Partnership sought to do an assessment of the smelter plant before they shut it down. I would have read that for you all before, but if you don't know, you could just go on and Google it. It's a Guardian article that says the cabinet note says that the smelter plant would have been profitable at, I think, $2,600 or $2,700 per ton, and the price was above that for a significant period of time, and it's been averaging that for the past how many years. But they say you'll get cancer and kill you. All over the world, you have smelter plants. Never hear about it, but people getting cancer and die. At least the numbers that the UNC spoke about. They shut it down, cancel it. We owe money to the Chinese. Kamala Persad jumped on a stage and said, a platform, and said she would build a ship repair facility on the same site on which the smelter plant was supposed to be built. She was there for 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days and did nothing. Did not build it. Made no attempt to build it. She told that to the people of Labrador Mama Gaidem when they looked at all the jobs that they would have gotten from the smelter plant and could still have gotten. But they lost that. They buy that. And where are they today? Today they want to come and tell you about Petrotrin and the shutdown of the Petrotrin refinery and how it impacted people from as far as La Brea and Point Fortin and all of these different things. Yeah, but tell us about how the shutdown or the cancellation of the smelter plant would have affected these people too. Because fence line communities would have been built up around where the smelter plant was supposed to be. And all the vendors and so on would have been selling food. And they're talking about who was selling food to Petrotrin workers. Vendors would have been selling food to the workers at the smelter plant too. And plenty of people in La Brea and Point Fortin would have gotten work there too, and they didn't. Based on the cabinet note and the report that they did, the outcome of that report showed that over 7,000 jobs were lost, potential jobs were lost from construction and during the operations. But they don't talk about that. No. But what the PNM mash up the economy? Like they talk, who created Petrotrin? Who was the one who bought up all the assets of these different energy companies, oil companies, and created Petrotrin? The PNM did that. Who created First Citizens Bank is the same PNM that bought up the Penny Bank and this bank and Workers Bank and who not, and created First Citizens. All of these different things that they don't talk about. But you know the PNM destroy and the PNM destroy. But ask them, what did the PNM create? All of a sudden, they go on blank. Question mark. They can't figure it out. Can't figure it out. And on saying Petrotrin workers got 2.7 billion in funds, land, and upward mobility to heritage, etc. And look at the thing. The very land that the PNM spent $15 million under the LSA to develop, to give to the former Petrotrin workers, this government come and take it back and give it to Landmark TT and give it to their favorite financier, their now favorite financier, to build houses at Alambi for the wealthy. Where is the outcry from the UNC supporters? All of you all who are the defenders, the crocodile shed tears sharers for the workers of Petrotrin and so on, and the closure of the refinery. I saw one of them talking just now about that they will see the flare again at the refinery. Well, guess what? When the PNM demitted office, they were in the process of having that flare turned back on through negotiations with a company called Oando. Remember that? And the UNC then was saying, we don't want no foreigners, that the assets of the refinery belongs to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, and the government has to open it back. We don't want to lease it. We don't want to sell it to no outsiders. But now they gone to India to invite India to come and open it. They went to Guyana. They went to as far as the US, right? To ask for help there to get somebody in the US to come and open back. Now they don't care who it open under. Once it open, but under the PNM, no, we don't want no foreigners. No Oando. We don't want them. They're going to do up and do all kind of research to say Oando are making money and all kind of foolishness. All kind of dotish talk. They came to defend that. When PNM brought Jindal, Kamala said, Jindal is part of a corrupt cook-up involving Rowley and Maduro, and the plan is to reopen the refinery to refine Venezuelan oil. All kind of allegations she come with. And her supporters were, yeah, we don't want Jindal because Jindal is a crook and he's a criminal and he was charged in India. But yet still, the same Indian Prime Minister that came here, Narendra Modi, right? Mr. Jindal is a part of his government. He won a seat under Mr. Modi's party and sits in the Parliament of India. So the people of India who voted for him had no problem with whatever legal challenges he had. They had no problem with him. But in Trinidad here, UNC supporters had a problem with gender. We didn't want him because he's a criminal and he have criminal charges and all kind of foolishness. But while you have a man sit down in the parliament, sitting as a minister in the lower house who's on $1 million bail for fraud, for trying to defraud the state of over $1.4 million in taxes on the purchase of a vehicle, right? You all have a man who is currently subject of a police investigation based on what was told to Wendell Eversley just recently, when he consulted with the DPP with respect to the status of certain investigations. He, along with certain contractors, are before the civil court accused of bid rigging and conspiracy and fraud, among other things. But he's sitting down in the parliament as a minister. You have another man who was mentioned in a US State Department report, accused of being involved in human trafficking and prostitution. And this was made public before he was screened, right? But yesterday he's sitting as a minister. You have a man who's supposed to be under police probe since 2020 for claims of trying to hide monies that he would have gotten through ill-gotten means between 2010 to 2015. When he and his mother opened a business, never run a business before, but all of a sudden open a business in 2011 and getting millions of dollars in contracts, winning bids over companies that had years and years of experience. Nothing wrong with that. But if these allegations had been made about a PNM minister, we wouldn't hear the end of it from UNC supporters. And that's what's wrong with you, because you all only look at corruption from one perspective. If you are a citizen of this country, look at it from all perspectives. All. And so when I hear all the talking nonsense about is only under the UNC that is seeing big boys getting locked up and all kind of nonsense. First of all, the people are detained. But let us not forget, it was under the People's National Movement while they were in office that a minister of government, a sitting minister of government, Marlene McDonald, was arrested and charged. It was under the People's National Movement while they were in office that Stuart Young's then stepdaughter was arrested and charged. Don't forget that, right? Government ministers and relatives of government ministers were charged under the PNM while they were still in office. But you will not see a government minister being charged under the UNC so coming before the court. If it was Keith Rowley, you feel Mr. Lee would still be in the cabinet? Once Marlene McDonald was removed from her position as Minister of Housing and just became an ordinary MP because Dr. Rowley couldn't remove her as an MP because she was elected. So she had the option to either resign or serve out the rest of her term. But she could not remain in the cabinet. But how the hell you all are the vanguards of good governance and transparency and all of that, right? And integrity in public life, but you have people sitting in the cabinet as ministers presiding over ministries and giving contracts and all of these things, negotiating on behalf of the citizens of this country, while they are the subject of police investigations and have matters before the court. That would never happen under a PNM government. When Kamala came, when she made her statement, read out her letter some years ago against Franklin Khan and Eric Williams, alleging that they take bribe and all kind of nonsense from Sam Dan Suk. What did Mr. Manning do? Fire the both of them, remove them from his cabinet, let them go out there and face the law. Afterwards, Dan Suk come and said that the UNC put him up to that the men never took any bribe. Cases were dismissed. Right? But they all don't talk about that. They always Emailgate, and Rowley and Emailgate. But forgot before Emailgate came around, you had Kamla Prasad Bisesa and that nonsensical lying letter that implicated two men. Under Emailgate, nobody was charged. Franklin Khan was charged and Eric Williams was charged based on the testimony of Dancer and Dansu, which turned out to be a blatant lie and a concoction from the pit of hell, better known as the House of the Rising Sun, the UNC. But you all don't ever talk about that. No, everything is Emailgate. But Kamla did that. Nothing. And Jimmy's asking, what about Philippa Jericho project? There you go. And that's what you have live sport. We had a whole report, several reports published, making claims, right? As much as the most recent newspaper article where we learned about an additional $8 million that was supposed to have been part of the arrangement with Adolphus Daniel. So instead of 34 million, he was supposed to get 42. But like he forgot about the 8 million, he was content with 34. And that 8 million, instead of going for that project, was split up among several persons. It was alleged, including the then minister. But you all don't talk about that. today that individual is a minister in a ministry, but want to talk about Emailgate and accuse the PNM of supporting wrongdoing. You all are the biggest upholders of wrongdoing in this country. Biggest. Because you all can't seem to take off your hat, your political hat, and see things through the eyes of being a citizen. Because we say, if anybody in the PNM did wrong, let the chips fall where they may. When it is Marine was charged, nobody was saying, well, you know, anything and is a setup and nothing of the sort. If she did wrong and she did the crime, she had to serve the time. It is what it is. Nobody came out in defense. But every time a UNC minister or a UNC MP is charged, PNM is a PNM with John. No, they're innocent. But then talking nonsense about what if the police didn't have evidence against the Hadids, they wouldn't be charged. Well, they weren't charged. And therefore, in the same yardstick, if the police didn't have evidence against Ram Logan and Ramdeen, they would not have been charged. But we will deal with that on another day. Is that all you get? Your business sort out inside, leave Penny to lead. But Penny is the leader. What are you talking about? Penny was, well, she wasn't challenged, but she's the leader. She's the opposition leader. So, to be fair, our AG gave info to the TTPS for investigations and the TNTech drama. Bachelor, what nonsense are you talking about? I am talking about government ministers who have cases before the court and government ministers who have, you feel if anything comes across Jeremy's desk relating to any wrongdoing on the part of any government minister that he go in and hand over any file? You think they're interested in looking at that? Instead of running the country, all they focused on doing is looking through ministry to see what Kutru ran back and all they could stir up. So they come with the secret list, the TNTech list. And what came out of that? Absolutely nothing. Other than for a former TNTech general manager to come out and say, well, you know, this list predated the Rowley administration. This list has been around for a while. And he said it in the public, he said Kamla Prasad-Bissasa's name was on the list between 2010 and 2015. He didn't say it in Parliament under parliamentary privilege. He's recorded on a newspaper article stating that. So if he lied, let them sue him. But they can't, because it is a fact. The man came out and said he didn't have to say that. But of course, the UNC will say he's a PNM. That's why he's saying that. Well, if he lied on the prime minister, who was prime minister then, she should sue him. But you all wouldn't talk about that. Oh, secret list, and who name was on a list, and this and that. But we were only interested in the list 2010 and 2015, and whose name was, and we're not interested in that list, and whose name was on that list, and whose electricity might not have been cut. We're not interested in that. PNM is the reason the country is what it is. Hand over the whole country to the 1%. Now Kamala have the big dog, and who guilty should. How did the PNM hand over the country to the 1%? It's like they sent all for me. It's like really they sent all for me, I don't know any 1% who own any company that paving road. None. Name one for me, because unless if we are defining 1% in terms of our ethnic group, Junior Sami is not part of the Syrian Lebanese community. Kusal is not part of the Syrian Lebanese community. Namalko is not part of the Syrian Lebanese community. Danis is not part of the Syrian Lebanese community. Kalko is not part of the Syrian Lebanese community. I don't know of any member of the Syrian Lebanese community who gets contracts to pave roads. Name one for me now. Name one for me. The only thing you all can identify to say the only way in which the Syrian Lebanese community has benefited from the state is one, government renting buildings from them, and two, them receiving lands from the government to be able to put up businesses and so on. Okay? We've already dealt with that. The PNM tried to put things in place to stop renting from the 1%, or at least to reduce the amount of 1% rentals on the government books. The UNC, what did they do? They came into office, met buildings there, they refused to outfit it, they continued to rent. They renewed leases. You all talk about 1 Alexandra Street for years, and how they rented this building from Faris and so on. But that lease was for 3 years, from 2009 December, when the PNM established the lease, until December of 2012. The UNC renewed the lease from 2012 to 20. Well, they were going 1 month, and then renewed it until 2016. So that when the PNM came in 2015, 2016, Maxi Coffee, who was Minister of Public Admin then, under whose portfolio government rentals was, he said they were waiting for the lease to expire for them to decide what to do. And after 5 years under the UNC of that building being empty, you know what the PNM did? They put the Ministry of Public Utilities there. Since 2016, the Ministry of Public Utilities has been using that building. The UNC come and they shut down construction of several buildings. For the 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days that they were renting from Issa Nicholas, whose son they put on the board of Caribbean Airlines as the chairman. For the 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days, they were renting that blue glass building at the bottom, at the corner of Independence Square and Abercrombie Street. They could have done what Rowley did in the first year of coming into office, outfit the building at Ajax Street and move customs from that building to Ajax Street. Since then, for the entirety of the PNM's reign, 15 to 25, that blue glass building was empty. It had a sign on the Abercrombie Street side for rent. All of a sudden now, this government come in office, the sign come down, and I see people going in and out of that building. Right? For 9 years, it was empty, you know. Nobody rented it. But so as this government come back into office, all of a sudden, the sign come down, and people coming in and out of that building. I don't know what they have there. Probably, I don't know. See what inquiries we could make. Okay? But just putting that there for you. Let's see here. So I'll just saying PNM need to do what they have to do and stop being so proper. And that's the PNM's problem. That you see, Owando before that was Jindal, before they said they were giving OWTU. Okay. And they were giving OWTU, and OWTU couldn't afford it. Right? They couldn't come up with the money. Like, you forget that? Seemingly you forgot that, right? That when the PNM gave first dibs to the OWTU, and they said, here, what? We will give you a better deal than what you are proposing. While you are proposing to come and give us 700 million or 750 million US upfront, we will do you one better. We will give you a 3-year moratorium, and then you'll pay us over the course of 10 years. So we'll give you 13 years to pay us this 750 million. Instead of you going to take a loan now upfront to pay us 750 million, and then you're struggling to make payroll, you're struggling to find money to buy oil for the refinery throughput and so on. So 13 years to pay 750 million. And Kamala come and ask, where they get any money from? All of that. Like you weren't here last week when I spoke about that. The OWTU fell through. The government gave them 3 opportunities, 3 chances, till they came with their fraudulent $1.5 billion US wire transfer receipt, say that 1.5 billion US was transferred to their bank account. No such money came. Lies, deceit, fraud. Eventually, the government said, "No, well, they're not serious. So let's give the opportunity to somebody else." When the UNC came into office, Owando, the government was in negotiations with Owando. What happened after that? What happened after that? All we keep hearing now is soon, soon, soon. Real people kicking down the door. Just now, Munila had to get a new door with the amount of people who lining up who want the refinery. Since November last year, the committee was supposed to submit the report. The committee under Kevin Ramnarine. Who going to wear that? You want to list? All right, let me just play one thing here and then I go on. I keep saying I wasn't going to stay long enough. All that easy, you know. So, right. So this is going to here. Let's see if I find this. Listen to the Minister of Planning and Development in respect to the Tobago Airport too, you know.
Value. It's not that Tobago did not need a new airport. They did not need an airport the size of what they built. But you talk about being fiscally responsible. value is not that Tobago did not need a new airport, did not need an airport the size of what they built. $1 million. But you talk about being fiscally responsible.
So according to the Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Tobago didn't need an airport the size of the one that that was built. All right, because that's too good. That's too good for Tobago. That's too big. What did a fancy airport so for? Just go another little thing and call that George, and annex to what you currently have. But today they're proud, very proud, because no longer, when the plane come and you have to board the plane, you have to walk out to go up the steps to board the plane. No, you have sky bridges now. But that was, according to your Minister of Planning and Economic Development, Tobago didn't need that. Yeah, they need an airport, but not one that big. Just a new facility. But today, Pali boasting, they're going to spend $10 million more to outfit and thing, because when the people come, they must have a best airport and whatnot. And yeah, the people who comparing that airport in Tobago to the Piarco airport and saying that airport in Tobago is much better than Piarco. Piarco need a facelift. But according to them, that was too good for Tobago. And the PNM gave Tobago that. I wonder if the Tobagonians have that view, or they share that view, that airport that they got there they didn't need that. They didn't need such a big and expensive airport. Terminal. No. The PNM did too much for you all. That was too much. They spent too much money. But it's a fiscal responsibility. PNM didn't need to spend so much money, because as part of constructing such a large airport, remember, it created employment. The bigger the airport is, the more people you need to hire, and the longer it would take to build, and people benefited. The hardwares in Tobago would have benefited as well. The people who selling the little food and whatnot and stuff, the workers, when it's lunchtime, they would go and they eat, buy the food and stuff. So it benefited the economy of Tobago. But Mr. Man here telling you about fiscal responsibility and so on. It's not that Tobago didn't need an airport, they just didn't need one as big and as fancy as what the PNM built. But the PNM do nothing for Tobago. The PNM don't like Tobago. Rowley don't like Tobago. What Ali had to say about that? Not one damn thing. Not one thing. But if a PNM person had said that, oh boy, you would hear about who is house slave and who is house Negro and all that kind of choppy talk. Ishmael John is saying they bad mind that airport and everything the PNM did, and doing they bad mind everything. So true. Yes, and the TPP still siding with them. Still saying the two TPP MPs in the lower house. You think they object to that? No, as David Thomas said, they are part of the government, so they support that. Yeah, that was too good for Tobago. So condemn the PNM for building such a large airport terminal in Tobago and spending taxpayers' money, so much of taxpayers' money in Tobago. That money could have been better spent in Trinidad. And right. But we got no love for that. Today they're proud of that, and because of that big terminal that the PNM built, that according to Swarat Singh, Tobago didn't need. Farley is now boasting about they're looking for direct flights from Canada and New York and Miami, so you don't have to come to Piarco Airport and then take a connecting flight via Caribbean Airlines to come across to Tobago. The airport is big enough now in Tobago. They have Skybridge and all the facilities that you could come directly, and the tarmac and so on could now accommodate more planes. So thanks to the PNM, the TPP could now go out and engage in discussions and flight arrangements and flight agreements and so on to bring more airlines to Tobago. Thanks to the PNM for being so fiscally irresponsible in building such a large airport terminal for Tobago. Thanks, Kennedy. Anyway. PF Cutters say, notice we in the NTPP opposing the Rocky Point Hotel like they did. Of course, they're not. Because Kamala sanctioned it, so all is good. If Kamala says so, it's so. Let's see. They send the Auditor General to do her Cambridge Analytica and the people for the UNC to win. That's so true. Yes, Super C. I saw that clip. I know I saved it, but I'm not finding it. Where Pali was telling the reporter he hope he have a rubber for his willy or some kind of nonsense, kind of triple talk. You know, if Dr. Rowley had said something like that, let me just throw this in the mix too, right? For someone here. I'll leave it this one.
Indian is 35.4%. If every single Indian voted for the UNC or for the partnership, they could never get the 51% required. East Indian is 35.4%. If every single Indian voted for the UNC or for the partnership, they could never get the 51% required.
But the PNM racist and the PNM always blowing the racial dog whistle. That wasn't Keith Rowley saying that there. Just throwing that in there. Yeah. Folks, we will chat again soon. All right. Next week Sunday, I know I will not be on because it's either right. So the opposition will be having our retreat over the course of the next weekend, right? Saturday into Sunday. But I am supposed to be out of the country in any event. So either way, I will not be on next Sunday. All right. So I guess following week, I may still be out of the country. So, but I'll still see if I can do the podcast while I'm outside. I should be able to. So enjoy the week, folks. Have a productive one. Keep safe on the nation's road. I saw a young man from my alma mater, St. Mary's College. He died yesterday riding his father's motorcycle, 15 years old, on the highway, slammed into a big TIDA, and he lost his life. All right, so the school is in mourning. So condolences to his family and also to his colleagues at St. Mary's College. So take care.